I glanced at my watch, willing the hands to move faster. Another hour until my shift ended, and I could finally confront Ethan about the text message I'd seen on his phone. The ER bustled around me, but my mind was elsewhere. "Kate, we need you in Trauma 3. Clara's voice cut through my thoughts. I snapped back to reality, pushing my personal worries aside. On my way, as I rushed to the trauma room, I nearly collided with Dr. Patel. He steadied me with a concerned look. "Everything all right, Kate? You seem distracted today." "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just a bit tired." The next hour flew by in a whirlwind of patients and procedures. As I changed out of my scrubs, Clara appeared beside me. "Rough day?" she asked, her eyes kind. I hesitated, then decided to confide in her. I found a suspicious text on Ethan's phone, from a woman named Samantha. Clara's eyebrows shot up. "Oh, honey, what did it say?" "Something about meeting up later." It was flirty. She squeezed my arm. "Don't jump to conclusions. Talk to him first." I nodded, grateful for her support. "That's the plan." The drive home felt endless. I rehearsed what I'd say to Ethan, my stomach in knots. When I finally pulled into our driveway, I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The house was quiet when I entered. "Ethan," I called out. "In here," came his reply from the living room. I found him lounging on the couch, beer in hand, eyes glued to the TV. He barely glanced up as I entered. "How was your day?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He shrugged. "Same old. Bunch of idiots at the office can't do anything right." I perched on the arm of the sofa, gathering my courage. "Ethan, we need to talk." He sighed, finally looking at me. "What now?" "I saw a text on your phone yesterday. From Samantha." His expression hardened. "You were snooping through my phone?" "It popped up while I was using the calculator," I explained, feeling defensive. "Who is she?" Ethan stood up, towering over me. "She's a client, Kate. Not that it's any of your business." "It is my business if my husband is texting other women." He laughed, a harsh sound that made me flinch. "Oh, please. Don't be so dramatic. You're acting like a jealous teenager." I felt my face flush with anger and embarrassment. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm asking a simple question. And I gave you a simple answer. Drop it." But I couldn't drop it. The nagging doubt in my gut wouldn't let me. If she's just a client, why was the message so personal? Ethan's eyes flashed dangerously. "What exactly are you accusing me of, Kate?" I stood my ground, even as my heart raced. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm asking for an explanation." He stepped closer, his voice low and menacing. "You want an explanation? Fine. Here's one. Maybe if you weren't so caught up in your little nurse world, playing hero every day, you'd have time to be a proper wife. Then I wouldn't need to look elsewhere for attention." His words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at him, shocked into silence. Ethan grabbed his keys from the coffee table. "I'm going out. Don't wait up." As the front door slammed behind him, I sank onto the couch, my mind reeling. What had just happened? Was this really the man I'd married? I pulled out my phone, my vision blurring with unshed tears. I needed a friend, someone to talk to. My finger hovered over Clara's number, but I hesitated. What would I even say? A text notification popped up, making me jump. It was from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Thomas. Remember me? The guy with the broken arm from last week? I hope it's okay that I got your number from the hospital. I was wondering if you'd like to grab coffee sometime." I stared at the message, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Who was this Thomas? And why did his text make me feel more alive than I had in months? I spent the night tossing and turning, Ethan's cruel words echoing in my mind. When my alarm blared at 5 a.m., I hadn't slept a wink. I dragged myself out of bed, determined not to let my personal life affect my work. The house was silent. Ethan hadn't come home. At the hospital, Clara took one look at me and frowned. "Rough night." I nodded, fighting back tears. "Ethan and I had a fight." "It was bad, Clara." Really bad. She squeezed my arm. Want to talk about it over coffee? We found a quiet corner in the cafeteria. As I recounted last night's events, Clara's expression darkened. Kate, honey, this isn't right. The way he spoke to you. I sighed. I know, but maybe I overreacted. He said Samantha's just a client. Clara shook her head. Don't make excuses for him. Trust your gut. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. Sorry about last night. Dinner tonight to make it up to you. I showed Clara the text. She raised an eyebrow. What are you going to do? I don't know, I admitted. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. As I changed out of my scrubs, I made a decision. I'd give Ethan a chance to explain. I arrived home to find Ethan in the kitchen. Takeout containers on the counter. Hey, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I got your favorite. We ate in uncomfortable silence. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Ethan, we need to talk about last night. He sighed. Kate, I told you. Samantha's just a client. Can't we move past this? How can we move past it when you won't even acknowledge how you spoke to me? I felt my anger rising. You belittled my career, my concerns. Oh, here we go again. Ethan interrupted, rolling his eyes. Always the victim, aren't you? I stared at him, shocked. Excuse me. You heard me. You're always looking for something to be upset about. It's exhausting, Kate. I felt like I'd been slapped. Exhausting? Trying to communicate with my husband is exhausting. Ethan stood up abruptly. You know what? I can't do this right now. I'm going out. Where? I demanded. To see Samantha? He froze, his back to me. When he turned, his expression was cold. You really want to know? Fine. Yes, I'm going to see Samantha. And you know what? It's not just business. We've been seeing each other for months. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What? I whispered. You heard me, Ethan said, his voice devoid of emotion. I've been having an affair. And honestly, it's a relief to finally say it out loud. I felt like I couldn't breathe. How could you? He shrugged. It was easy. Samantha understands me. She doesn't nag or make me feel guilty for working late. She's not constantly exhausted from playing hero at the hospital. Each word was a dagger to my heart. I can't believe this. I choked out. Believe it, Ethan said, grabbing his keys. I'll be back later to get some things. I'm staying at Samantha's for a while. As the door slammed behind him, I collapsed onto the floor, sobs racking my body. How had my life fallen apart so completely? Through my tears, I saw my phone light up with a text. It was Thomas again. Hey Kate, just checking in. Hope you're having a good day. That coffee offer still stands if you're interested. I stared at the message, a lifeline in the chaos of my crumbling world. Without thinking, I typed a reply. Actually, I could really use a friend right now. Coffee sounds perfect. As I hit send, a mix of guilt and excitement fluttered in my stomach. What was I doing? But then I thought of Ethan's cold eyes, his casual admission of betrayal, and I squared my shoulders. I deserved better. And maybe, just maybe, coffee with Thomas was the first step towards finding it. I stood outside the coffee shop, my heart pounding. Was I really going through with this? Meeting Thomas felt like a betrayal, even though Ethan had already shattered our marriage. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Thomas waved from a corner table, his smile warm and genuine. As I approached, he stood up, revealing his impressive height. Kate, I'm so glad you could make it, he said, pulling out a chair for me. I sat down, feeling a mix of nervousness and comfort. Thanks for inviting me, Thomas. I really needed this. His eyes filled with concern. Is everything okay? Before I could answer, a familiar voice cut through the cafe chatter. Well, what do we have here? I froze. Ethan stood at our table, his eyes cold and accusing. Beside him was a stunning blonde woman I assumed was Samantha. Ethan. I managed to choke out. What are you doing here? He smirked. I could ask you the same thing. Didn't take you long to move on, did it? Thomas stood up, his presence suddenly imposing. "I think you should leave." Ethan laughed. "Oh, look at this. Kate's knight in shining armor. Tell me, does she bore you with hospital stories too?" I felt my face flush with anger and embarrassment. "Ethan, stop it. You're the one who—" "Who what?" he interrupted. "Who finally found someone who appreciates me. Someone who doesn't make me feel guilty for having ambition." Samantha tugged at Ethan's arm. "Baby, let's go. This isn't worth it." I stared at her. This woman who had been a nameless threat and was now painfully real. She met my gaze, and for a moment I saw a flicker of— was it guilt? Thomas's voice was low and dangerous. "I won't ask again. Leave. Now." Ethan opened his mouth to retort, but Samantha pulled him away. As they left, I caught her whisper. That was Thomas Reeves, the gaming mogul. The color drained from Ethan's face as he glanced back at us. I felt a small, vindictive thrill at his shock. As the door closed behind them, I slumped in my chair, exhausted. "I'm so sorry, Thomas. I didn't expect." He sat down, reaching across the table to take my hand. "Kate, you have nothing to apologize for. Are you okay?" I nodded, fighting back tears. "I will be. It's just seeing them together." "I understand," Thomas said softly. "Do you want to talk about it?" And suddenly I did. The whole story came pouring out. The suspicions, the confrontations, Ethan's cruel words and casual betrayal. Thomas listened intently, his hand never leaving mine. When I finished, he squeezed my fingers gently. "Kate, I'm so sorry you're going through this. But I want you to know something. You're incredibly strong. And you deserve so much better." I looked up, meeting his kind eyes. "Thank you, Thomas. I'm not sure what I'm doing here, to be honest. Everything's such a mess right now." He smiled. "We're having coffee. Two friends talking. Nothing more, nothing less. Unless, I prompted, my heart skipping a beat. "Unless you'd like to have dinner with me sometime," Thomas said. "No pressure, of course. But I'd love the chance to get to know you better, Kate." I hesitated, torn between excitement and fear. Was I ready for this? But then I thought of Ethan's smug face, of the life I'd be leaving behind, and I made a decision. "You know what? Dinner sounds wonderful," I said, surprising myself with my boldness. Thomas's face lit up. "Great. How about Friday?" As we made plans, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to something. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. But as we left the cafe, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this wasn't the last I'd seen of Ethan and Samantha. Something told me the drama was far from over. The hospital corridors felt different now, as if the walls themselves knew my secret. Every glance, every whisper from my colleagues seemed loaded with judgment. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept drifting to Ethan, to Samantha, to Thomas. "Kate!" Clara's voice snapped me back to reality. "You okay? You've been staring at that chart for 5 minutes." I forced a smile. "Just tired. Long night." Clara's eyes narrowed. "This isn't about Ethan, is it?" Before I could respond, a commotion erupted down the hall. We rushed towards the noise, finding a group of nurses struggling with a belligerent patient. "I need to see her," the man shouted. "Where's Kate?" My blood ran cold as I recognized Ethan's voice. He was disheveled, reeking of alcohol. "Sir, you need to calm down," a security guard warned. Ethan's wild eyes found me. "Kate, there you are. We need to talk." I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "Ethan, what are you doing here? You can't just—" "Can't what?" he sneered. "Can't come see my wife at work? Oh, wait. You're too busy playing doctor with that Thomas guy, aren't you?" Gasps and murmurs rippled through the gathered staff. I felt my face burning with humiliation. Clara stepped between us. "That's enough. You need to leave now." Ethan laughed bitterly. "Oh, look. It's Kate's guard dog. Tell me, Clara, did you know she was cheating on me?" "I'm not cheating on you." I exploded. You're the one who had an affair, remember? The hallway fell silent. Ethan's face contorted with rage. You bitch. You think you're so perfect, don't you? Little nurse Kate, always putting everyone else first. Well, guess what? I'm done playing second fiddle to your job. Security finally managed to restrain him. As they dragged him away, Ethan shouted, "This isn't over, Kate. You'll regret this." I stood there, trembling, as his words echoed through the suddenly silent corridor. Clara put an arm around me. "Come on, honey. Let's get you out of here." She led me to an empty break room, where I collapsed onto a chair, burying my face in my hands. "Oh God, Clara. What am I going to do?" "First, you're going to breathe," she said firmly. "Then, we're going to figure this out together." As I struggled to compose myself, my phone buzzed. It was Thomas. "Hey, Kate. Just wanted to check in. Hope your day's going okay. Looking forward to dinner tomorrow." A fresh wave of guilt washed over me. "I can't do this, Clara. It's too much too soon." Clara squeezed my hand. "Kate, listen to me. You deserve happiness. Don't let Ethan's drama hold you back." I shook my head. "But what if he's right? What if I am cheating?" "Stop that right now," Clara said sternly. "You and Ethan are over. He made that choice when he started seeing Samantha. You have every right to move on." As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. "Kate, it's Samantha. We need to talk. It's important." I stared at the screen in disbelief. "Now what?" Clara read the message over my shoulder. "Oh, honey, what are you going to do?" I took a deep breath, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "I'm going to meet her." "Are you sure that's wise?" Clara asked, concern etched on her face. I nodded. "I need answers, Clara. And maybe this is my chance to finally close this chapter of my life." As I typed a reply to Samantha, agreeing to meet, I felt a mix of dread and determination. Whatever she had to say, I would face it head-on. No more hiding, no more second-guessing myself. I looked up at Clara, my voice steady. "I'm done being a victim. It's time I took control of my life." As I hit send, I knew I was stepping into uncharted territory. But for the first time in months, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The old Kate was gone. In her place stood a woman ready to fight for her happiness, no matter the cost. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the coffee shop where Samantha waited. My heart raced as I gathered the courage to go inside. This meeting could change everything. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and walked in. Samantha waved from a corner table, her face a mix of nervousness and determination. "Kate," she said as I sat down. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Samantha fidgeted with her coffee cup. I owe you an apology. And an explanation." "Go on," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She took a deep breath. "Ethan, he's not who you think he is. He's not who I thought he was either." My stomach churned. "What do you mean?" "He's been lying to both of us," Samantha said, her eyes filling with tears. "He told me you two were separated, that you were the one who cheated. And then I found out about the others." "Others?" I echoed, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Samantha nodded. "At least 3 that I know of. He's been playing us all, Kate. And there's more." She pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. With shaking hands, I opened it to find bank statements, emails, and photos. "He's been embezzling from his company," Samantha explained, "using the money to fund his affairs and his gambling habit. I found out last week, and when I confronted him." She trailed off, pulling up her sleeve to reveal a bruise on her arm. I gasped, a mixture of horror and anger washing over me. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. Samantha shook her head. "Don't be. I'm the one who's sorry. I should have known better, should have seen through his lies. But I'm done being his victim. And I think you should be too." I stared at the evidence before me, my mind reeling. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you deserve to know the truth," Samantha said. "And because I think we both deserve better than Ethan." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was Thomas, asking if we were still on for dinner. I looked up at Samantha, feeling a strange kinship with this woman I'd once seen as my enemy. "What are you going to do?" I asked her. She squared her shoulders. "I'm going to the police with this information. And then I'm leaving town, starting fresh." "What about you, Kate?" I thought about Ethan's behavior at the hospital, about the years of subtle put-downs and manipulation. I thought about Thomas, waiting patiently for me to be ready. And I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who let herself be diminished by a man who never deserved her. "I'm filing for divorce," I said, the words feeling right as soon as they left my mouth. "And I'm not letting Ethan control my life anymore." Samantha smiled, a genuine expression of relief. "Good for you, Kate. You deserve happiness." As we parted ways, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I pulled out my phone and dialed my lawyer's number. "Hi, it's Kate," I said when she answered. "I need to file for divorce. And I have some information you should know about." Next, I texted Thomas. "Dinner sounds perfect. I have a lot to tell you." As I drove home, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, relief, and most surprisingly, hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Pulling into my driveway, I made a decision. It was time to pack my bags and leave the house I'd shared with Ethan. As I started gathering my things, my phone buzzed again. It was Clara. "Hey, how did it go with Samantha? Are you okay?" I smiled, realizing I had a support system I'd almost forgotten about. "I'm better than okay," I replied. "I'm ready to start my new life. Can I crash at your place for a while?" Clara's response was immediate. "Of course, honey. I'll have the guest room ready." As I packed, I felt a surge of excitement. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt full of possibility. 6 months had passed since I'd left Ethan, and my life had transformed in ways I never imagined. Thomas had become my rock, his unwavering support helping me navigate the tumultuous waters of divorce and self-discovery. As I prepared for our date night, I couldn't help but smile at my reflection. The woman staring back at me was stronger, happier, and more confident than she'd been in years. "You look beautiful," Clara said, leaning against the doorframe of her guest room, my temporary home. I turned, grinning. "Thanks. I can't believe how nervous I am. It's just dinner with Thomas." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Just dinner? Kate, that man looks at you like you hung the moon. I have a feeling tonight's going to be special." Her words sent a flutter through my stomach. Could she be right? The doorbell rang and I took a deep breath. Here goes nothing. Thomas stood on the porch, looking dashing in a suit. His face lit up when he saw me. "Kate, you're breathtaking." As we drove to the restaurant, Thomas seemed unusually quiet. I was about to ask if everything was okay when he suddenly pulled over. "Thomas?" I asked, concerned. He turned to me, his eyes intense. "Kate, I had this whole evening planned out, but I can't wait another minute." My heart raced as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Catherine Marie Johnson, these past months with you have been the happiest of my life. You're strong, compassionate, and more beautiful inside and out than you know. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you just how much. Will you marry me?" Tears sprang to my eyes as he opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. "Oh, Thomas," I breathed. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger, and we shared a kiss that felt like a promise of forever. The rest of the evening passed in a blissful blur. As we celebrated at the restaurant, I couldn't stop staring at my ring, marveling at this unexpected turn my life had taken. "I have one more surprise," Thomas said as we finished dessert. "I know you've been worried about my employment situation." I blushed, remembering my initial concerns about his seemingly jobless state and gaming obsession. He grinned. "Well, I wanted to wait until the right moment to tell you. I'm not just a gamer, Kate. I own Galaxy Quest Gaming." My jaw dropped. Galaxy Quest was one of the biggest names in the industry. You're a gaming magnate?" Thomas nodded, looking sheepish. I didn't want to lead with that. I wanted you to know me, not my bank account. As the magnitude of this revelation sank in, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on your engagement. Enjoy it while it lasts. My blood ran cold. How did Ethan know? Thomas noticed my expression. Kate? What's wrong? I showed him the text, my hands shaking. It's Ethan. How did he find out? How does he know where we are? Thomas's face hardened. I'll handle this. He won't bother you again. But as we left the restaurant, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Outside, a familiar figure stood by our car. Ethan. Well, he sneered. If it isn't the happy couple. Thomas stepped in front of me protectively. Leave, Ethan. You're not welcome here. Ethan laughed, a bitter sound. Oh, I'm going. But not before I give you my wedding gift. He pulled out an envelope and tossed it at us. Enjoy your fairy tale while it lasts, Kate. The truth always comes out. As Ethan walked away, I picked up the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were photos of Thomas with other women, in compromising positions. I looked up at Thomas, my world tilting on its axis once again. What is this? Thomas's face paled. Kate, I can explain. But could he? As I stared at the evidence in my hands, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Had I jumped from one betrayal into another? The joy of moments ago evaporated, replaced by a sickening dread. What was the truth? And more importantly, could my heart survive another devastating blow? 1 year had passed since Thomas's proposal, and despite the initial shock of Ethan's wedding gift, we had worked through the misunderstanding. Those photos were from Thomas's past, long before he met me. His honesty and patience had only deepened my love for him. Tonight, we were celebrating our first anniversary as an engaged couple at La Mer, the most exclusive restaurant in town. As we entered, Thomas squeezed my hand, his eyes twinkling with a secret. You look stunning, he whispered, kissing my cheek. I blushed, smoothing down my silk dress. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. Gaming Mogul. As we were led to our table, I froze. Sitting just a few feet away were Ethan and Samantha. My heart raced as Ethan's eyes met mine, a smirk playing on his lips. Thomas noticed my distress. Kate? What's wrong? I nodded towards Ethan's table. They're here. Thomas's jaw tightened. We can leave if you want. I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. No. I won't let him ruin our night. We sat down, trying to ignore the palpable tension in the air. As we perused the menu, I could feel Ethan's gaze boring into me. So, Ethan's voice cut through the ambient chatter. If it isn't the happy couple, how's domestic bliss treating you, Kate? I gripped my menu tighter, determined not to engage. Thomas reached across the table, taking my hand. Ignore him, he murmured. But Ethan wasn't done. He stood up, wineglass in hand, and sauntered over to our table. What's the matter, Kate? Cat got your tongue. He turned to Thomas, his voice dripping with disdain. And you, the unemployed gamer who stole my wife. How are you supporting her? Food stamps. Thomas stood slowly, his voice low and dangerous. I think you should return to your table, Ethan. Ethan laughed. Or what? You'll challenge me to a video game duel. Samantha appeared at Ethan's side, tugging at his arm. Baby, please. Let's just go. But Ethan shook her off. No, I want to hear how this loser plans to give Kate the life she deserves. Something in me snapped. I stood up, facing Ethan. The life I deserve? You mean one without lies, cheating, and emotional abuse? Because that's exactly what Thomas gives me. Ethan's face contorted with rage. He raised his hand, and for a horrifying moment, I thought he might strike me. But Thomas was faster, grabbing Ethan's wrist. Don't you dare, Thomas growled. The restaurant had gone silent, all eyes on our confrontation. Samantha stepped forward, her face flushed with embarrassment. Ethan, that's enough, she hissed. Then, to everyone's surprise, she turned to me. I'm so sorry, Kate. You don't deserve this. She paused, taking a deep breath. And neither do I. With that, she slipped off her engagement ring and placed it on the table. We're done, Ethan. For good this time. As Samantha walked away, Ethan's face paled. He looked lost, his bravado crumbling. Thomas released Ethan's wrist. I think it's time for you to leave. Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but the arrival of the restaurant manager silenced him. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to exit the premises. As Ethan was escorted out, the tension in the room dissipated. Thomas turned to me, his eyes full of concern. Are you okay? I nodded, surprised to find that I was. Actually, I've never felt better. Thomas smiled, then dropped to one knee. The restaurant patrons gasped collectively. Catherine Marie Johnson, he said, pulling out a small box. This past year has shown me that you are the strongest, most incredible woman I've ever known. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? For real this time, no interruptions. Tears welled in my eyes as I looked at the man before me. Kind, patient, and loving. Everything Ethan wasn't. Yes, I whispered. 1,000 times yes. As Thomas slipped the ring on my finger and the restaurant erupted in applause, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The ghosts of my past had finally been laid to rest. But little did I know, the biggest challenge of our relationship was yet to come, waiting just around the corner to test the strength of our love once more. 6 months after our engagement, Thomas and I were in the final stages of wedding planning when my world tilted on its axis once again. I stared at the pregnancy test in my hands, 2 pink lines staring back at me. Joy and fear warred within me as I thought about how to tell Thomas. But before I could, Clara burst into the break room, her face pale. Kate, you need to see this. She thrust her tablet at me, open to a business news site. The headline made my blood run cold. Gaming giant Galaxy Quest faces bankruptcy amid fraud allegations. My hands shook as I read the article. Thomas's company was being investigated for financial irregularities. The stock was plummeting. And there, in black and white, was a quote from the lead investigator, Ethan Johnson. I felt like I couldn't breathe. How could this be happening? Just as I thought I'd found my happily ever after, it was crumbling around me. I tried calling Thomas, but it went straight to voicemail. With a sinking heart, I realized I knew where he'd be. The drive to Galaxy Quest headquarters felt endless. When I arrived, the parking lot was swarming with reporters and angry employees. I pushed through the crowd, flashing my engagement ring at security to gain entry. I found Thomas in his office, head in his hands. When he looked up, I saw a broken man. Kate, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. What's going on, Thomas? I asked, my voice trembling. Is it true? The fraud allegations. He shook his head vehemently. No. Well, not exactly. There were some creative accounting practices to keep the company afloat during tough times. But I never stole a penny, I swear. My mind reeled. And Ethan? How is he involved? Thomas's face darkened. He must have gotten wind of our vulnerabilities. He's been buying up our debt, positioning himself for a hostile takeover. Just then, the door burst open. Ethan strode in, flanked by lawyers and looking triumphant. Well, well, he sneered. How the mighty have fallen. Ready to sign over your company, Thomas? I stepped between them, fury rising within me. Ethan, how could you? Haven't you done enough damage? Ethan's eyes widened as he took in my presence. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I once loved. But it vanished quickly. This is business, Kate. Nothing personal. Nothing personal? I laughed bitterly. You're destroying the man I love out of spite. Ethan flinched at the word love. He doesn't deserve you, Kate. He's a fraud just like you. I interrupted. At least Thomas built something. All you've ever done is tear things down. Silence fell over the room. I turned to Thomas, making a split-second decision. Thomas, do you trust me? He nodded, confusion evident on his face. I faced Ethan and his lawyers. I have a proposition. I'll invest in Galaxy Quest. Every penny of my savings, my inheritance, everything. in exchange for a controlling interest. Gasps echoed around the room. Ethan's face contorted with rage. "You can't do that. Watch me," I said, my voice steady. "Oh, and Ethan? I'm pregnant. So not only will you not get this company, but you'll never have the family you always wanted either." The look on Ethan's face was worth every penny I was about to invest. His lawyers huddled, whispering furiously. Finally, they nodded. "We accept your offer, Mrs. Johnson-to-be," the lead lawyer said. As the paperwork was drawn up, I turned to Thomas. His eyes shone with love and gratitude. "Kate, I don't know what to say. You saved me. Us." I placed his hand on my stomach, smiling through my tears. "We saved each other. And now, we're going to build something beautiful together." As we left the office, hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but we'd face it together. I'd found my strength, my voice, and my true partner. Life had come full circle, and karma had indeed spared no one. But in the end, love, trust, and resilience had won out. As Thomas and I stepped into the sunlight, ready to face whatever came next, I knew that this was just the beginning of our greatest adventure yet.
Rachel was meant to be at school one morning, but she came home crying. She had a test paper in her hand that said, "A liar gets a 0. Your dad being a gang member is a lie, right?" Mr. Anderson asked. Rachel wailed pitifully as I held her tenderly. "I appreciate you telling me. It seems that I ought to speak with Mr. Anderson. I brought 50 of my men to the school a few days later. Gregory is my name. I currently reside with my cherished daughter, Rachel, after my wife passed away a few years ago. Rachel began the 3rd grade at her elementary school this year. Despite the fact that I don't have much time for family vacations, I always find time for breakfast. So, how's school lately?" "It's the same as always." "I understand." We had breakfast as usual that morning, but Rachel didn't seem like herself. I made an effort to speak with her, but our exchange ended in silence. Given that winter was approaching and it was still early, perhaps she simply didn't want to get out of her cozy bed. I chose not to confront her. Rachel walked glumly out of the house after breakfast. I yelled, "Have a good day." "Yeah," she said with a feeble nod. I cocked my head, wondering whether this kind of morning had always been difficult for her. I didn't have time to consider it, but something didn't feel right. I had to leave for work as well. After putting on my pricey jacket, tying my tie, and putting on a collared dress shirt, I headed to the office. "Good morning." "Hey." I welcomed my rugged-looking men when I got to the office. I calmly lifted my hand to acknowledge everyone as they bowed one after the other. Following the first, I sat down at the rear of the office and reached into my jacket pocket, but I couldn't find what I was looking for. What? I left my phone at home, damn it. That morning, I had ignored my own preparation since I was preoccupied with Rachel. It wouldn't have mattered much when I was younger, but these days I can't function without a phone. The organization uses phones for internal communication as well. I sighed and rose from my chair. "I'm going out for a while. I will return shortly. Compile the paperwork from today and the report from yesterday while I'm away." "Yes, sir." The front door was unlocked when I got home, which was a short walk away. That seemed strange. I normally take care to lock up. Rachel, who should have been at school, was in the living room when I carefully stepped in. "Rachel? Why are you here?" "Ah, Dad." Rachel appeared startled as well, but she quickly averted her eyes. "How did school go?" "By now, it ought to have begun." It's fine. Don't worry about it." "No, it's not fine. I won't know what's going on unless you tell me." "Did something happen?" "It's fine. Just drop it." "Hey, wait." Without giving any real explanation, Rachel ran off to her room. It was obvious something had happened, but pressing her now wouldn't help. So I decided to call the school. Using the phone left in the living room, I called the school. A woman named Ms. Thompson, the vice principal, answered. I didn't know the school hierarchy well, but I figured I'd get more details from Rachel's teacher than the vice principal. I explained that I was Rachel's father and asked to speak with Mr. Anderson. After a moment, the young man came on the line and introduced himself as Eric Anderson. He seemed annoyed, probably because he was pulled out of class. I could hear the irritation in his voice. "Gregory, what can I do for you?" "It's about Rachel. Did she come to school today?" "No. She wasn't here during roll call, and she hasn't shown up to any classes either. In fact, not just today, She's been absent for a while now. What? For a while? You mean Rachel hasn't been coming to school at all? I wasn't told anything. Why didn't you contact me? Are you trying to blame the school for your lack of communication with your daughter? It's the parent's responsibility to supervise. Maybe the reason she stopped coming lies at home. What do you mean by that? I tried to push for an answer, but Mr. Anderson just said, "There's nothing more I can say," and handed the phone back to Miss Thompson. Flustered, she apologized, saying, "I am truly sorry." But apologizing wasn't going to fix anything. I asked Miss Thompson to look into Mr. Anderson's behavior and ended the call. I was furious at Mr. Anderson's attitude, but thinking about it calmly. Maybe he wasn't entirely wrong. If I had paid more attention, maybe I would have noticed something was wrong with Rachel sooner. Maybe I hadn't communicated with her as well as I should have. But even when I asked her, she wouldn't talk, and the school was no help. Not knowing what else to do, I called my mother. "Yes? What is it? Another parenting crisis?" "Oh yeah? Something like that. Every time you call, it's the same story. Bring me some good news for once, would you?" "Sorry. Ever since I lost my wife, I had no one to turn to for parenting advice. So I had swallowed my pride and started calling my mom. Raising a daughter on my own has been harder than I ever imagined. Sometimes I think risking my life at work is 100 times easier." Maybe sensing how I felt, my mother had become more open about giving me advice. "So what happened this time?" "Well, it turns out Rachel hasn't been going to school for a while. I always saw her off in the mornings, but it seems she was coming home after I left. Oh dear. She won't tell me what's going on. And when I called the school, they basically said, maybe it's a problem at home. What's a parent supposed to do in a situation like this? Well, maybe something happened at school. I've heard that even among children these days, there can be complicated social issues. It's hard, but the most important thing is how Rachel feels." How Rachel feels. That's right. If she's running away from school, then you need to be the one place she can run to. Don't scold her without knowing the reason. If she doesn't want to talk, then let her be silent. Accept her with open arms no matter what. You need to be on Rachel's side. My mother's words, coming from the woman who never gave up on raising a delinquent like me, carried real weight. She was right. I couldn't afford to be shaken. I had to make sure Rachel saw home as a safe place, a place she could truly feel at ease. Yeah, you're right. I'm still figuring things out, but I'll think of whatever I can do for Rachel. For Rachel's sake, I'll do anything I can to help. Just take care of yourself too, okay? Yeah, thanks. I tapped my phone and ended the call. Come to think of it, I'd been so wrapped up in work that I always put myself and my family second. Even when I got married, I was already at an age where people said I'd missed the window. Back when my wife was alive, I depended on her for almost everything, from parenting to housework. After she passed, I threw myself into work to make sure Rachel never lacked financially. But I didn't have many memories of just sitting down and talking with her or playing with her. No wonder people said I lacked communication. I had to start by being more present for Rachel. With that decision made, I rushed back to the office to finish work early and make time for family. I managed to wrap up work and get home before sunset. I stood a bit nervously in front of Rachel's room. "I'm home. Hey, Rachel, how about we go out for dinner tonight?" The closed door cracked open, and Rachel peeked out. "Really? Yeah. Let's skip my lousy cooking for once and go have something tasty outside. Is that okay? You used to say going out was dangerous." "Yeah, I know, but it's not like it used to be. And no matter what happens, I'll protect you. You don't have to worry. Let's go." Rachel came out with her eyes sparkling. She clung tightly to my leg. Given the nature of my work, taking my family out in public had always been a risk. Back then, the neighborhood wasn't exactly safe either, so going out together was out of the question. But now the streets were calmer, and I could stay right by her side, so there was no problem. She's my one and only daughter. I'd give my life to protect her. With that strong conviction, I took Rachel out to eat for the first time in years. During dinner, I didn't mention school once. Of course, I was concerned, but I figured if I brought it up, it would cloud her face again. And for the first time in a long while, Rachel laughed. Truly laughed. It was hard to believe how down she'd seemed earlier that day. She smiled brightly, chatted excitedly, and ate with such delight. Yes, Rachel had always been a smart, cheerful girl. So for her to look that withdrawn, it really wasn't normal. And the fact that I hadn't noticed it sooner just showed how immature I still was as a parent. It was the communication gap, just like they said. Sorry for being such a lousy dad. Huh? What did you say? Oh, nothing. Is it good? Yeah. At least for now, her spirits seemed lifted. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the moment, all I could do was stay close and keep watch. After dinner, and all the way until bedtime, Rachel kept smiling. I just hoped that smile wouldn't fade. The next morning was a complete contrast to the day before. I watched Rachel leave the house looking energetic, with her school bag on and her cap in place. She definitely looked like she was heading to school, but until yesterday, she had only pretended and come back home afterward. There was no guarantee today would be different. I didn't think she had to force herself to go, but not knowing the reason behind it still worried me. To make sure I didn't miss a single sign, I decided to work from home that day and wait for her. I'd already given instructions to my men yesterday to keep things running without me at the office. I laid my phone and paperwork out on the table in the living room and got to work. As I was drafting a report for my boss, I suddenly heard the front door unlock, the sound of the latch turning. My phone screen read 9:15 a.m., about 30 minutes into the first period. Feeling a sense of dread, I rushed to the entryway, and there was Rachel, looking like she was about to burst into tears. Rachel, Dad. The moment she saw my face, she finally broke down crying. I wrapped my arms around her small frame right there. You did your best. I'm so glad you came home. Let's go inside for now, okay? Just like my mother said, if Rachel was running away from school, then I needed to be the place she could run to without fear. No matter what, I would protect her. That thought solidified in me again. Back in the living room, I handed Rachel a warm mug of hot chocolate. She placed a crumpled piece of paper she'd been holding onto the table and took the cup. I quickly cleared away my work and sat beside her on the couch. Sipping the hot chocolate slowly to cool it down, Rachel gradually seemed to settle down. Rachel, can I ask what happened? Only if you feel like talking, of course. I won't push you. This. Her face twisted just a little with pain, but Rachel gathered her courage and responded. She pointed at the crumpled piece of paper on the table. I carefully opened it and saw it was a test paper. Rachel, who took after her mother and was always bright, had been marked with a 0. And worse, a liar gets a 0. What is this? There were no markings or corrections on the paper, just those big red words scrawled across it. Even the easy questions, ones I could understand, Rachel had answered correctly, but it looked like it hadn't even been graded. It made no sense at all. I was speechless, and Rachel began to tremble again. I could only imagine how she must have felt receiving that paper and then coming home with it. The thought alone tore me apart. I hugged her again. That must have been so hard. But you're not a liar. I know that, Rachel. Everything's going to be all right. You're okay now. What, Dad? 10 minutes later, once her tears had settled, Rachel began to quietly share what had been happening. Remember around the middle of the first semester when we got back our science tests? There was this one question I solved a little differently from the textbook. Mr. Anderson said it was wrong, but I don't think it was. I found the same method in a book from the library, and when I asked Ms. Thompson, she said, that's valid too. But Mr. Anderson wouldn't regrade it. How come? Since then, Mr. Anderson stopped talking to me. He even started saying stuff that made me feel stupid. Then the boys in class joined in and started teasing me. So that test is what led to them calling you a liar? No, I don't think this is about the test. You have an idea what it's about. I never told you this, but our school does parent observation days every semester. Wait, really? I had no idea. Yeah, I figured that since you try not to scare people around you, you probably didn't want to come to parent observation days. So I didn't tell you. I'm sorry. No, it's fine. But what does that have to do with you being called a liar? When Mr. Anderson asked why you never came to parent observation days, I told him, because my dad is a gang member. I had no words. My job is being part of an organized crime group, which people call a gang. I was a delinquent kid with a bad attitude, lousy grades, and no interest in a normal job. It was through a certain connection that I met Mr. Keller, the boss who took me in and led me down this path. While doing work for the organization, both my senior and Mr. Keller constantly drilled into me, don't bother civilians. Don't make your parents cry. Thanks to them, I think I've developed at least a bit of a decent sense of humanity. Still, to regular folks, I probably look intimidating. I've got large tattoos, a build that a suit can't hide, and even a few scars on my face. So I tried to avoid school events because I didn't want to scare the staff or parents. But I never imagined that my absence would end up taking away Rachel's smile. Mr. Anderson said, "That can't be true. Your dad being a gang member is a lie. He's probably just too embarrassed to come because he's a low-life idiot. He didn't even listen to me and started calling me a liar in front of everyone." I see. I gently patted Rachel's head as she quietly sipped her hot chocolate. I was glad she told me. Rachel hadn't done anything wrong. There really was an issue with that test. And it's true. I'd been keeping my distance to avoid making people uncomfortable because of who I am. But Mr. Anderson had refused to acknowledge any of that. Even during our phone call, he'd come off arrogant. Maybe he's got too much pride. It felt like he looked down on Rachel just because she was a kid. Pathetic. Rachel, thank you for telling me. Sounds like I should really have a word with Mr. Anderson. Really? But don't you hate going to school? Well, it doesn't feel right never showing my face, especially when they're the ones taking care of you. You said a parent observation day happens every semester, right? When's the one for this semester? Next week. Perfect. I'll confront him. No. I'll go and say hello properly, okay? If you don't feel like going to school, you don't have to. Don't push yourself. Nope. If you're going, then I'm coming with you. Let's confront together. You're just going to school. Don't go picking up weird words. That one's on me, okay? Her expression lit up. It was a relief to see. But my real challenge was just beginning. In my own way, I would protect Rachel. With that, I contacted the office and let them know I had an unexpected confrontation scheduled for the following week. 1 week later, the parent observation day had arrived. I stopped by the office briefly, then headed to the school on foot. I wore a muted, professional-looking suit, one that wouldn't draw attention, but still passed for a civilian outfit. I stood at the entrance of the office building. Surrounding me were my stern-faced men. There were around 50 of them. Sorry, Gregory. It was short notice, so this is all we could round up. No, this is more than enough. Any more, and we'd be drawing too much attention. All right, let's move. Yes, sir. I led the way confidently, with the others falling in line behind me. I had told them to wear casual clothes that wouldn't stand out, not their usual suits. Of course, covering up their tattoos was non-negotiable. The sight of them all in their clumsy civilian outfits, most with no fashion sense whatsoever, was honestly hilarious, but I kept that to myself. And so, we arrived at Rachel's elementary school. Rachel should already be in class by now. I had to hold my head high for her sake, to make sure her efforts today wouldn't be wasted. We passed through the school gate, into the yard, heading for the building, when a woman suddenly came rushing out to stop us. Who are you people? Sorry to alarm you. I'm Gregory, the father of Rachel in class 3-1. Oh, you're the one who called about Rachel last week, right? So you remember. I was the one who transferred the call that day. Then you must be Miss Thompson. I'm terribly sorry for all the trouble. I'm here today to speak directly with Rachel's homeroom teacher, Mr. Anderson, I believe. Would you mind letting him know? Mr. Anderson? Yes, understood. He's still in class at the moment, so there may be a bit of a wait. Would you mind waiting in the reception room? Of course. Thank you. Certainly. But the gentlemen behind you, are they also guardians of students? Nah, don't worry. They'll wait outside. I'll go in alone. All right. You guys know the drill. Don't cause trouble and don't scare the civilians. Yes, sir. Leaving my men outside, I followed a clearly nervous Miss Thompson into the school and was shown into the reception room. She even offered me tea before saying, "I'll go get Mr. Anderson right away," and left. I sat down on the guest sofa, sipping the tea as I waited for the man to arrive. A few minutes later, the chime rang through the speaker in the corner. Class must have just ended. Soon after, there was a knock at the door. I gave a short reply, and a young man, probably still in his 20s, entered with an arrogant swagger. He slumped into the sofa across from me and let out an exaggerated sigh. I'm Eric, the homeroom teacher for class 3-1. Nice to meet you. I'm Gregory, Rachel's father. Pleased to make your acquaintance. So you're the rumored gang member, he sneered. Mr. Anderson practically mocked me. Just imagining him speaking to Rachel the same way made my blood boil. But I kept my cool and responded calmly. Do you remember a few months back when Rachel asked you about her test answers? I understand she pointed out what she believed was a grading error. That might have happened, but I don't really remember. I don't make grading mistakes. Teachers are human too. Mistakes happen. What makes you so sure you're infallible? Well, I graduated from Tokyo University. Unlike common folks who keep making mistakes, I'm on a whole different level. but I wouldn't expect someone like you to understand that. There's no way someone like me would make a mistake a grade schooler could catch. Listening to him talk with such smug certainty made my frustration grow. Even I knew that Tokyo University was a top-tier school, but I didn't think that gave him the right to look down on Rachel. Tokyo University, huh? So what? What? You're telling me you're sure there was no mistake in grading just because you went to Tokyo University? That's right. Glad you finally understand. Honestly, talking to someone so beneath me is just exhausting. No wonder your daughter turned out to be the kind of child who tells ridiculous lies, like my father is a gang member. Oh, so you really think Rachel made that up? Of course. Maybe it's time you acknowledged your own failings and apologized. Say it loud. I'm a burden on society. A disgrace who couldn't even raise his kid properly. I'm sorry for causing everyone so much trouble. He slammed his hand on the table. The teacup tipped over, spilling its contents. That was the end of his tirade, it seemed. And after hearing him out, I couldn't understand any of it. Maybe if I were one of those elites, I could make sense of his attitude. Why did this young teacher, still early in his career, think he could throw his weight around in a place like a school? Does having a Tokyo University degree really hold that much value among civilians? Even if it does, it doesn't justify hurting Rachel. Not ever. I'm not accepting that. There's no way I'm letting a guy like this be responsible for my daughter Rachel. Just as I was about to unleash my anger, the door to the reception room swung open without so much as a knock. Excuse me. Forgive the interruption, but I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. Miss Thompson, what are you doing? That's completely inappropriate. I do apologize, but there's something that must be corrected in what I just heard. Corrected? Yes. Mr. Anderson, you said there was no grading mistake, but that's not true. What are you talking about? Please take a look at this. Miss Thompson quickly cleared the table and laid out a test paper and a thick book. The title read Introduction to Physics for Elementary Students. She pointed to a specific part of the book and explained. This is the science test where a grading mistake was suspected. Now, while the textbook explains one method for solving the problem, Rachel used a different approach, but she arrived at the same answer. This book, written by a prominent physicist and graduate of Tokyo University, outlines that exact method. I believe Rachel, being an avid reader and a bright student, must have come across it in her studies. That's absurd. Mr. Anderson stared at the test paper and the book, comparing them intently. While he was distracted, Miss Thompson turned to me and bowed deeply. Gregory, I must apologize. I was unable to correct Mr. Anderson's conduct. He is, in fact, the son of the school's board chairman. While there hasn't been direct pressure from the chairman himself, it's difficult for us to openly go against Mr. Anderson. Ah, I see. So that's what's been going on. So Mr. Anderson hadn't been acting out just because he went to Tokyo University, but because he was also the chairman's son, having both academic prestige and parental influence. Yeah, that could make someone feel untouchable. And if no one around him could challenge him, it would only get worse. Honestly, I almost felt sorry for the guy. But Miss Thompson, why are you speaking up now? When Rachel asked me about the test, I realized the mistake too. But at the time, I didn't say anything. I thought it would be easier if the student just let it go, because it was only a small score issue. But I've regretted it ever since, seeing how deeply it hurt her. I know it's not enough, but I'd like to formally apologize on behalf of the school. I'm truly sorry. She stood and bowed again, even deeper than before. I sighed quietly. Miss Thompson, please, you don't need to bow to me. Your apology won't change anything. The one who needs to apologize and reflect is sitting right there, isn't he? Ugh, I'll admit, there might be room for discussion regarding the test. But in any case, what's done is done. As long as we work on preventing a repeat, that's enough. If you're satisfied, then please leave. Not yet. How do you plan to take responsibility for calling Rachel a liar? She hasn't been able to attend school because of you. And she never lied. Not even once. Calling her dad a gang member is just some low-grade scare tactic. That kind of thing doesn't fly anymore. So, if I prove I'm actually a gang member, then she's not a liar in your book, right? If you'd like, I can show you my tattoos or even our family crest. Better yet, why don't I invite you to my office? You'll be greeted by a few of my men. They've got a tough look, but they're decent guys. What nonsense is this? Mr. Anderson panicked. I leaned in, serious as ever. I was ready to do whatever it took to prove Rachel wasn't lying. Just then, there was a knock at the door. I exchanged a glance with Miss Thompson. She straightened her posture and softly called, "Yes." But before she got a reply, the door opened. The moment the person entered, Miss Thompson gasped. "The chairman, Mr. Anderson." "What? Huh?" Both teachers looked stunned. I just blinked, unsure how to react. The chairman was the highest authority in the school. He was even above the vice principal or the principal. It should be someone from the founding family, a major sponsor, or a figure of immense influence, something like that. But what on earth was someone like that doing here? While we stood frozen, Mr. Anderson pushed his son aside and took a seat directly across from me. "Good afternoon. I'm Kenneth, the chairman of this elementary school." "Ah, nice to meet you. I'm Gregory, father of Rachel from class 31. "I know it's been a while, Gregory." My brow furrowed without thinking. "Been a while? What does that mean?" I'm pretty sure I've never met a heavy-set middle-aged guy like this before. He introduced himself as Kenneth. "Do I know anyone by that name? Kenneth?" As I was deep in thought, Mr. Anderson let out a snort and laughed through his nose. "Huh, of course you don't remember. Who remembers the face of a middle school classmate anyway?" "Middle school classmate?" "Yes, we were in class 35 at a middle school. Our homeroom teacher was Mr. Morris, though you skipped school for about half the year. Didn't even show up in the group photo." "Ah, now that you mention it, I did go to that school, that class. I do remember that teacher's name. And yeah, I skipped a lot." Finally, starting to remember, I added, "I can't recall the names or faces of classmates, but I guess it's true we were in the same class." "What, Dad? You and Gregory were classmates?" Mr. Anderson looked more shocked than anyone. Even Ms. Thompson stood blinking beside him. Honestly, I wasn't sure what to make of it myself. Mr. Anderson, who claimed to be my former classmate, shot a sharp glance at his son sitting beside him and then turned back to face me. "I've been briefed on the situation. It seems my foolish son has called one of his own students a liar. He even encouraged the class to mock her. I truly apologize." With that, Mr. Anderson bowed his head. He placed one hand firmly on Eric's head, who was sitting next to him, and forced him to bow as well. But Eric wasn't done, and he tried to fight back. "Wait, hold on, Dad. Mr. Anderson, you believe him over me? He's a gang member, for crying out loud." "He is." "Yes, Gregory is a legitimate gang member, a senior member of a large organization that oversees this entire region. In fact, he even has his own group now." "What? Oh, you know quite a bit about me. Am I that famous?" I chuckled. "Huh, you really don't remember anything, do you? Don't you remember getting into a fight to help me when some thugs picked on me back in middle school?" "Did I? I fought so many back then I can't remember which was which. But yeah, now that I think about it, beating up those punks was what got me started on this path. I kept getting targeted by delinquents after that and beat every one of them. Eventually, I got recruited. Maybe you were there that day, huh?" "That was you?" Eric asked. "More or less," I replied. "But I guess you've completely forgotten about me. Even at the mini-class reunions, people talk about you. They say he's a gang member who never harms civilians. Back then, I skipped school whenever I felt like it and never turned down a fight. School was boring, and I had nothing better to do. I didn't know how to deal with the strength I had. Whether they were students or adults, I fought everyone. Eventually, a real gang member took notice, Mr. Keller, the boss, who said, 'I'll teach you how to use that strength,' and brought me into his organization. Under him, I learned about honor, respect, and restraint. Never show off your strength. Never harm civilians. Never make your parents cry. Those teachings still live in me. By the time I finished middle school, I'd stopped picking fights unnecessarily. I'd learned better ways to protect the things I cared about. I didn't go to high school. Instead, I stayed by Mr. Keller's side, and here I am today. Well, whether you remember or not, Gregory isn't the kind of man who lies or accuses others without reason. He may be rough around the edges, but he stands up for those in need. At the very least, he'd never use his background or title to belittle someone else." Listening to all this, Eric looked frustrated. Here was my old classmate, now the chairman of a major school dedicated to raising the next generation. And me? I'm still the same no-good guy I've always been. Still, if nothing else, I want to be the kind of man my wife and Rachel can be proud of. I looked once more at Eric. "So there's no more reason to call Rachel a liar, is there?" "Yes, I can personally vouch that he's a gang member. Of course, neither I nor this school have any connection to organized crime. I haven't seen Gregory in decades, so do you have something to say? I'm truly sorry. That doesn't sound like enough. Rachel was not lying, and the issue with the test, it was a grading error on my part. I deeply apologize. Let me also offer my apologies, Gregory. I'm truly sorry your precious daughter had to go through this. We are terribly sorry. The three of them bowed in unison. This time, I wanted to believe it came from genuine remorse. Please raise your heads. I don't need any more apologies. I wasn't the one who got hurt here. Yes, Eric, go to the classroom immediately and apologize to Rachel in front of the students and parents. Miss Thompson, can I ask you to supervise? Of course, she replied. Thank you. And another thing, the plan to have you succeed me as the next chairman? That's off the table. I can't entrust the future to someone who would willingly harm students. We'll appoint someone more suitable. What? Please wait, Mr. Anderson. That has nothing to do with. You think this is a separate matter? Good grief. When did you become such a twisted person? As a father, I'm ashamed. Kenneth, if you'd like, I can take him off your hands. Straightening out punks like him is one of my specialties. What? You mean at your gang office? No way, I laughed. I'd love to take you up on that, but just don't make it obvious. If people start suspecting a connection between a school and a gang organization, it could seriously damage our reputation. These days, even a rumor is enough to destroy us. I get it. Don't worry. Not every job in the organization is about sitting behind a desk. I've got plenty of ways to keep it low-key. You'll see. Is that so? In that case, I'll trust you. If he becomes a decent human being, he can come back. All right. Once you've got your mind and body ready, get in touch. Don't even think about running away, Eric. Please no. After that, Eric was practically dragged out by Miss Thompson. It probably wouldn't be long before the school cut ties with him too. I handed my office contact info to the chairman, Mr. Anderson, and took my leave. It wouldn't be good for someone with his public standing to have ties to a gang member like me. Just in case, I gave him my number but didn't take his in return. As I stepped out of the school building, a few of my men rushed over. They were out of breath, holding full trash bags and wearing towels around their necks. Gregory, welcome back. Thank you for your hard work. Idiot. I wasn't locked up. Everything's done here. How about your side? Yes, sir, we showed the civilians a thing or two. While I'd been inside handling things, I had my men assigned to tasks around the school. Their wording was rough, but they had done solid work. Even if Rachel's name had been cleared, being the daughter of a gang member carried a heavy stigma. It was unrealistic to expect people not to be afraid of gangs in general, but maybe, just maybe, if they could see we weren't all bad, Rachel wouldn't have to carry that burden. That's why I'd ordered my men to help clean up and beautify the school. They were involved in tasks like landscaping the yard, pulling weeds from the flower beds, fixing up the playground, and picking up litter around the area. All 50 of them had been given clear roles and worked in harmony to serve the community. If people could recognize our faces and associate us with kindness instead of fear, maybe Rachel wouldn't be made to feel ashamed. If it's to protect Rachel's smile, I'll do anything. All right, everyone, we're heading back to the office. Pick up trash along the way. Hand me gloves and a bag too. Yes, sir. I didn't make it to the parent observation day itself, but I'd say we accomplished a lot that evening. Rachel came home around sunset, apparently having walked back, chatting happily with her friends after we left. Eric went to class 31 and offered a public explanation and apology. Under Miss Thompson's watch, he bowed deeply and acknowledged both the grading error and his poor behavior. Rachel told me herself, and the kids who used to tease her apologized too. They said, "We're sorry for being so mean." Did you forgive them? Yeah, I told them, just promise you'll never do it to me or anyone else again. We can't be causing trouble for civilians after all. Stop using weird words like that, though. I guess it's kind of my fault. But I see you were able to make up with everyone. Think you'll be okay going to school from now on? Yep, I'm excited to play with everyone. Seeing her smile warmed my heart. But now that the whole incident had been explained and Rachel's innocence confirmed, it meant something else too. It meant the students and their parents knew her father really was a gang member. I could imagine how shaken the parents must have been. I just hoped it wouldn't cause Rachel to be pushed away again. Oh, and guess what? Everyone said they want to meet you and your men. Huh? What? Well, your men were cleaning up the school, right? And you were picking up trash too. We saw it from the classroom during recess. Everyone said they've got scary faces, but they seem like good people. I was so happy to hear that. I see. Yeah, so next time we have a school event, come to, okay? I want to show everyone that my dad's a gang member, but he's not scary and he's awesome. All right, I promise. Looks like our cleanup effort worked better than I'd hoped. It wouldn't mean much if we just did it once, though. Maybe we should make it a regular thing. A non-scary gang member. It sounded kind of ridiculous, but the idea that we might actually be accepted by the community made me feel a little happy. Someday, if something really serious happens, I hope the people around here won't hesitate to come to us for help. All right, time for dinner. What's the side dish? My special Hamburg steak came out pretty good today. It's not as fancy as the one from the kids' meal at a restaurant you had when we went out the other day, but still, I like eating out, but I love your cooking more. Thanks, that means a lot. We set the food on the table, and Rachel and I smiled at each other and said, let's eat. That night's Hamburg steak was the best I'd ever made. Eric, who had been Rachel's homeroom teacher, was forced to resign the day after the parent observation day. Just as promised, we took him into our organization. We also run a company as a legitimate front. Eric now works for that company and gets sent all over the country. In modern Japan, there are many vital industries like fishing, farming, forestry, and construction that desperately lack young workers. Our company sends manpower to those places, offering support through dispatch services. It's usually a last resort for folks drowning in debt, but I didn't tell Eric that and just tossed him in. Today he went to the sea. Tomorrow, he will go to the mountains. Eric now struggles in places where resumes and degrees mean nothing. Please let me take a break. I can't feel my arms anymore. You just took a break. If you don't hurry, the sun's going to set. Come on, get up, get up. I can't take this anymore. Class 31, now without Eric, has Miss Thompson as the acting homeroom teacher. She has plenty of experience and is well liked by the students. Rachel has taken quite a liking to her too. Since that whole incident, I've made it a point to be more present in Rachel's life, making up for lost time. We've been spending a lot more of it together, and from now on, I'll keep doing my best to protect Rachel's smile, always. Mr. Jobless, is dining bon, your mom delicious? That's how I was made fun of the other day by an interviewer I had met by chance at a posh restaurant. He had repeatedly insulted me in an interview. I had lived overseas for a while after graduating from college, and this interviewer made fun of me for not being in the US, even calling me unemployed. You're not doing him any favor by spoiling such a jobless guy, ma'am. The interviewer remarked, using the fact that I didn't respond because of the high-end restaurant's upmarket atmosphere. He even started giving my mother lectures. He had no idea that my mother would tell him, "It turns out you're the jobless." Just a few minutes later. Mark Harris is my name. I'm standing in front of a big building, looking sharp in a suit for a job interview. I'm in this building today for an interview with a company. I looked at my watch. 9:40 a.m. At 10 o'clock, the interview is scheduled to begin. I was pleased to be in front of the building 20 minutes ahead of schedule. I just got back from living overseas, so I'm quite pleased with how punctual American buses and trains are. 5 years ago, shortly after I received my university degree, I departed the United States. I enrolled in my university's economics department, but not because I was very interested in studying economics. I picked an institution that I could easily go to from my house. My grades alone allowed me to enter the economics department, which is the sole reason I ended up there. Nevertheless, I realized this wasn't what I wanted and felt more and more uncomfortable in each class. I had a dream, but for some reason I had given it up as impossible. I simply wandered around the institution. My mom got a job abroad at that point. Her departure from home was not unusual because she was a career lady who was constantly on the go. My mother has been away from home since I was a small child. But because my dad was constantly home, I never felt truly alone. My father is a writer, unlike mother. Although he appears to be a somewhat well-known author, my father is incredibly introverted and finds public speaking difficult. His rare public appearances earned him the moniker the Phantom Writer. Some even denied the writer's existence, speculating that he was actually a robot. By the way, the author's photo for his works is always a photograph of the cactus he is cultivating because my father doesn't like to have his picture taken. My parents were inseparable despite their disagreements. My dad's casual choice to leave with my mom when she had to work abroad was demonstrated by the fact that he only needed to pack their bags and locate his passport. As long as he has an internet connection, My dad can work from anywhere in the globe, he always brags. Given Dad's personality, my mother explained that she had anticipated his statement and advised him to renew his passport first if it was abroad. To be honest, I wanted to go too. I then signaled to my mother to take me with her by raising my hand. However, she dismissed it right away, convincing me of the value of completing college. My goal of relocating abroad was abruptly dashed. Even after that, my mom continued to travel all over the world for work, and Dad always went with her. My parents left me in our home in the United States so that I could continue to live there, and they moved overseas at ease. Left alone in the family home, I was initially resentful, but soon resolved to make my own way abroad. Somehow I managed to graduate from university, and instead of finding a job, I spent time living abroad in France and Italy. During my time in France and Italy, I only worked day jobs and part-time, which makes me realize now that I virtually had no employment history. I don't know why, but belatedly I couldn't help but feel a flicker of doubt, wondering if everything was going to be all right. With these anxieties in my heart, I reassured myself that everything would be fine because I'd passed the document screening. I then headed toward the company for the interview, once again encouraging myself. "Mr. Harris, please come this way." I checked in at the reception and am guided to a conference room. This time, I'm interviewing with a reasonably large apparel company called Sakura Blooms. The company primarily focuses on products for women and has an overwhelmingly female workforce. There are only a few male employees, and it seems I'm the only one taking the interview this time. Was it because I was applying for a mid-career position? But the job posting said they were hiring 3 people. As my anxiety grew, the door of the conference room where I was suddenly opened with a click. Sorry to keep you waiting. Let's start the interview." The one who appeared was a man whose name tag said Carter. I was initially surprised by his attitude as he entered, but what shocked me even more was his appearance. A gray suit that you can easily find at a big box store. It was so wrinkled, I wondered how it could have been stored to get that way. Even without a close look, it was obvious the buttons were coming undone. And the tie, where on earth do they sell those? It was a strikingly bright fluorescent pink with a cute illustration of a chick with large eyelash eyes right in the center. Where on earth do they sell such ties? Carter, staring at his tie, flashed a grin and said, "This tie? It's unique and stylish, isn't it?" I could only offer a polite smile. His hair was slicked down, either with too much wax or perhaps he hadn't bathed since yesterday. There was a distinct lack of cleanliness about him. I was quite shocked by Carter's reaction. Then he looked at me and sighed. Then I was suddenly asked, "You're a guy, right?" I could only reply with a hesitant, "Yes, I am." I wondered if he mistook me for a woman. "Do you understand that our brand primarily focuses on women's clothing, and still you applied for the job?" "Yes, of course." "Why? There are plenty of men's brands out there. Why did you specifically apply to ours?" "Oh, is the interview already starting?" With that thought, I shared the reasons for my application that I had come up with myself. "I'm interested in working at your company to deepen my knowledge about clothing and fashion." "Oh, okay." A remarkably uninterested response came back. "Is this an interview? What's going on here? What other brands do you know? You're not just aware of our brand, are you?" "Certainly not. If your company targets the same demographic. Hot Cheer, Emo, and Earth Shop have recently become popular. They offer products with a casual yet work-appropriate design, incorporating sophisticated colors and styles. If we target a slightly older age group, it is popular for its wide range of colors and ease of reuse." When I answered, Carter showed a momentary surprised expression. He had a look on his face as if he didn't expect I had been studying women's apparel brands. "It's a job interview, so you should study for it." Well, you should be able to answer that much. Now let's talk about your work history." "What's your work history?" "Yes, I've been overseas until recently. I've experienced various jobs in France and full-time positions." "Your resume shows a blank in the work history section." "Oh yes, I mainly work part-time jobs." "Huh. So is this your first job interview then?" "Yes, this is my first job interview for a full-time position." When I answered honestly, Carter looked at me with complete disdain in his eyes. "You were abroad, but you still end up as a part-time? Were you just living off your parents' money?" "No, it's not like that. I had worked part-time jobs during my university years to save money for my overseas experience. You know, people who say they were mostly abroad are kind of loose compared to us Americans. It's a bit worrying." They might be doing their job with a lack of diligence, and I can't trust them. Well, I'm also an American, but… And you, talking all high and mighty about having been abroad. But that's nothing to brag about. I thought from your appearance that you're a bit weak. And lately, there have been too many guys like you. Men should have a strong presence. And he starts eloquently describing his ideal image of a man. I've been listening, but it's starting to become a bit of a confusing conversation. What on earth am I being told? Besides, I hate to say it, but for a guy to actively pursue a company targeted at women, it seems like you have ulterior motives. If you have nothing like that, then prove it. Even if you tell me to prove it, how am I supposed to prove that? You're a guy working in a women's apparel company, aren't you? So we're in the same boat, aren't we? I thought to myself, but before I could say anything, Carter chuckled and said, "What's the matter? Can't answer that." I realized it was hopeless. Even if I miraculously passed this interview, I couldn't work with someone like him. Feeling that way, I briefly said, "I've had enough. I don't want to answer anymore," and stood up. I turned my back to Carter and began walking toward the door of the room. What? Running away? That's what these overseas folks are like. He sneered at me with a smirk on his face. He was a typical unpleasant person. I wondered if he was trying to provoke me and make me react somehow. Even if I was overseas, I didn't expect to be treated like this. I can't work with someone so discriminatory and biased. I decline a job offer, I said, and left the meeting room. As I left, I could hear him still saying, "Young people these days are so arrogant." The next day, as anticipated, I received a rejection notification for the job. My first job interview in the United States had ended abruptly. A few days later, I found myself at my mother's favorite high-quality restaurant. My mother had returned to the United States, and of course, my father had returned as well. Now the three of us are living together in our family home. This restaurant is my mother's favorite. She conducts business negotiations while dining at this restaurant, especially when it's so important she can't fail. She also dines out here with my father for special occasions. Unfortunately, Dad couldn't make it. But I'm happy you're here, so let's enjoy this circumstance. My mom hasn't been to this site for a while, and she's excited to be here again. Additionally, my father couldn't make it because he had a deadline for his work. Well, sometimes you don't get a job offer after an interview. Don't lose heart. Based on what I heard, the problem is on their side, my mother said with a smile. And I realized her intention. I see. She brought me here to cheer me up and encourage me after I'd been brooding about that interview for the past few days. What a wonderful mother I have. I was deeply moved. I said I would decline it by myself, but the truth is, I was a little down about it. Time flies. I thoroughly enjoyed the prix menu at the restaurant and the precious time with my mother. It's on me, so go ahead and wait for a sec outside, my mother said. And as I followed her instructions and changed my shoes at the restaurant's entrance, I saw some people coming in. Among them, there was a person wearing a familiar tie. It was a tie with a glaring fluorescent pink background and a cute illustration of a chick with long eyelashes and big eyes in the center. I had seen that tie recently. Carter. Today, he's wearing a slightly more decent suit than the other day, but he still can't cover the wrinkles. You know, more than that, the tie is way too conspicuous and has an incredible presence. That chick even appeared in the dream the day I interviewed. It's likely to come out again tonight. Then, it seemed like Carter also noticed me. He said, well, isn't this Mark, the overseas Rory we interviewed the other day? What a coincidence. Being able to come to such a nice place on a weekday. Overseas Rurys indeed stand out, huh? Have you gotten missing American food? Did you remember how to munch on that? He was clearly picking a fight with me. That last part sounded like baby talk. Don't bother me. It's so annoying, even just he remembers my name. As I was pondering what to say, my mom appeared and said, "Sorry for keeping you waiting, Mark. I got a souvenir for Dad. It took time a bit, sorry about that." In her hand, she's holding a paper bag. This is probably the sushi from this restaurant. While I was eating, she said, "Dad is also a big fan of the sushi here. Should we buy some as souvenirs?" It seems like she really ordered it. Is this Mark's mother? Carter suddenly asked. Against my hope, she replied, "Yes, that's right." "What? As I supposed. May I ask, is it you who paid the restaurant bill?" he suddenly asked my mother. "What's going on? What is he trying to say?" "Yes, that's right," my mother replied. "Huh, I knew it," he exclaimed dramatically, sighing deeply. Then he looked at me and said, "Is dining on your mom yummy, Mark the jobless?" Furthermore, he said to my mother, "It's no good, even for you. If you spoil this jobless guy, he will turn out worse." My mother and I were left speechless. Carter himself had this attitude like he was saying something great, sporting a smug look. "Mark, is this the person who interviewed you the other day?" "Oh yeah, I don't know why he's here." As my mother and I were secretly discussing this, my mother smiled and said, "Got it. Leave it to me." Oh, this mom's face is dangerous. Battle mode activated. "Excuse me, but who are you referring to as a jobless guy?" "Of course you know. That's your son. You've really spoiled him to the core. It seems that your son tried to join our company, but unfortunately, he couldn't break out of being the jobless." Carter laughed loudly. My mother had a beaming smile on her face, but she was clearly radiating an aura of anger that was palpable. Even I, who was standing side by side, noticed it. Why doesn't he realize, right in front of her? "Carter, what's going on?" I heard a male voice coming close. Looking in the direction of the voice, a man in a suit was approaching. Compared to Carter, the suit is wrinkle-free and looks clean, and he's carrying off a suit in a color that suits him well. At first glance, I got the impression that he was someone in a higher position, like CEO? "President Adams. How are you today, sir?" greeted Carter. "Oh, he really is the president." In the next moment, the man addressed as the president looked at my mother and exclaimed, "President Harris." "Oh, President Adams, isn't it? It's been a while. I didn't expect to meet you before the upcoming meeting," my mother said with a beaming smile. President Adams responded, "I would really appreciate your assistance in the upcoming meeting," while bowing graciously. President Adams, no matter how you look at it, appeared humble toward my mother, and the power dynamic was clearly in favor of my mother. President Adams looked at Carter and said, "Carter, offer your greetings. This lady is President Harris, the head of that Striped Group." The Striped Group. The Striped Group is a company that oversees dozens of apparel manufacturers in the United States. In fact, my mother is the president of the group, holding the position of the head of a so-called major company, the Striped Group. Oh, as I mentioned before, we're going to come under the management of them. Make sure to greet her properly. Really? That's news to me. I asked my mom. That's right. Starting from this spring, we're in the process of moving that forward. Now. "Oh, President Adams, this is my son." I greeted President Adams in person. "Are you President Harris's son?" I'm always grateful for her help. It's a bit embarrassing, but our business has many vulnerabilities, and, well, to cover those, she's taking care of it. I see. Although it looked like the business was doing well from the outside, it seemed that wasn't the case in reality. And so far, Carter had remained silent. When I looked at him, his face was turning paler than before. As President Adams said, "What's the matter, Carter? Why don't you greet?" My mother cut in with her words, No, it's quite all right. We already exchanged greetings earlier with this gentleman, so there's no need. Besides, Carter is one of your employees, isn't he? My son actually had an interview at your company recently, and it seems they took good care of him." My mother said with a beaming smile. "Wow, really? Does that mean your son will be joining our company? That's fantastic news. It's great to have such strong talent on board." No. It seems my son actually declined the offer on his own. I only heard about it from him, but it seems he didn't quite meet the standards over there, according to the person who conducted the interview. Really? But your son's been overseas. Oh yeah. Unfortunately, it seems he didn't meet the standards of yours, so he didn't seem to have a connection with your company during the interview. And even just now, the interviewer referred to my son as a jobless. What? Did our Carter really say something like that? Yes. Well, it's true that my son is unemployed while he's job hunting, so he's somewhat like a jobless. But it's a bit much for someone to say that, and it makes me wonder about the company's future. When my mother deliberately said that, President Adams turned pale too and glared at Carter. "Carter, how dare you?" "And no, President Adams, this." Carter seemed to be trying to come up with an excuse, but his face was turning increasingly pale, and he was completely stumbling over his words, repeating, "It's not like what you think." "If you're interviewing with that kind of attitude, I think no one would want to work here," I chimed in. I don't know how much President Adams is aware, but Sakura Blooms Inc. has a reputation, not in a good way, on the job information sites. Some reviews mention that there was a harsh interviewer. And even if you pass the interview, C in the HR department has been getting trashed in reviews. Also, The turnover rate was unusually high. That's why I was curious about what it was like, so I decided to try it out. And after that interview, I understood. Probably, they had been rejecting people in a similar manner all along. I guess for the past few years we've been shorthanded in a way that's rarely seen. I always thought we had a shortage of manpower, but it seems it was because of him. I left all these things to Carter, so I didn't know anything about the situation. I'm terribly sorry for that. President Adams lowered his head toward me. Judging by his attitude, it seemed he really didn't know about the interview. He's not at fault. Even seeing President Adams in this situation, the Carter in question remained silent the whole time. President Adams is someone to look up to. So Carter, why don't you apologize? Seeing the situation get out of hand, I couldn't help but speak up. Suddenly, Carter burst out. You lazy bum. Don't get smart with someone older than you. And lunged at me. But I easily dodged him with a quick move. Carter slid smoothly and suddenly tumbled onto the floor. Well, President Adams, if this person isn't dealt with properly, our company might not be able to welcome yours. Laughing merrily, my mother spoke, and President Adams nodded solemnly in response. Of course. Carter, you're fired as of today. I am. Carter, lying down, lifted his face, but his complexion had already turned ashen. Oh dear. Oh my. It seems like you've become a jobless, dear. My mother chuckled at that. A few days later, an article appeared in the finance newspaper with the headline, Women's apparel manufacturer Sakura Blooms, Inc. joins the Striped Group. In addition, several other apparel and textile companies were acquired, leading to more companies coming under the management of the Striped Group. Generally, joining a group doesn't change the management lineup of each company. But I heard that Carter was the only one who got fired. Apparently, the reason why Carter conducted interviews in such that manner was simply because he disliked anyone who seemed more competent or superior to himself. He wanted to fulfill the feeling of I'm the one choosing here. President Adams really trusted Carter, so he left all personnel matters to him, only requiring retroactive reports. I'll be more involved from now on, he said, reflecting on the situation afterward. I ended up joining my mother's company, the Striped Group, as an employee. However, I didn't give up on my own dream. In fact, I was more determined than ever to pursue my dream by working in this company, learning about clothing, and dealing with customers in the stores. A few more years passed, and I handed in my resignation to my mother, who was the president. President Harris, I'd like to resign. When I said that firmly, my mother looked at me. Do you already have plans for the next one? I want to pursue my own dream. I've made plans for it. Good. You should do what you love, work hard, and I'll support you. With those words from my mother, I left the Striped Group. And then, I finally launched my dream brand called Colorado. I handled everything from design to sales by myself. In fact, during the 5 years I spent studying in France and Italy after graduating from university, I underwent training to become a designer. While studying at the university's economics department, I had continued to think about clothing design on my own and even made clothes. However, I wanted to learn in a more formal setting. So, right after graduating, I decided to go to France. Thanks to my mother's connections, I was introduced to world-renowned designers in both France and Italy, where I worked part-time and continued to study. The reason I had no work history was because of this background. I studied design in France for 3 years and Italy for 2 years each, gaining recognition from my respective mentors, and then returned to the United States. I cannot thank my mother enough. She had introduced me to my design mentors. And I'm also grateful to my father for allowing me to pursue my passion. Actually, I wanted to learn from another company before starting my own brand, so I applied to Sakura Blooms Incorporated. Now let's just forget about that. My knowledge of business from university turned out to be quite useful when I started my own brand. I realized that there were no wasted experiences in life. The concept of my brand is break down gender barriers. It's about wearing whatever you like, regardless of gender. If a man wanted to wear a skirt, he should be able to. And women should be free to wear men's clothing. I embedded these ideas into my clothing designs. In line with this era, we plan to primarily use materials that consider SDGs and, initially, limit sales to online. In fact, I didn't have enough money to open a store. To my delight, my brand seemed to align with the current social climate, and I quickly gained attention. I received heartwarming comments from consumers like, "Thanks to Colorado, I've learned the joy of choosing the clothes I love, and I'm happy to have more options in clothing selection." Furthermore, after just 1 year, I was able to open a real store in a local shopping mall, and I could afford to hire employees. While it was a store in a rural area, more people came with the intention of buying my clothes. I was also fortunate enough to be featured in many fashion magazines, both domestically and internationally, which further boosted my brand sales. Having established an apparel brand, my next dream was to participate in Paris Fashion Week. I had been to Paris Fashion Week just once when I was a child, accompanied by my mother. The memory of that moment is still vividly etched in my mind. Glamorous clothing, makeup, and models striding confidently. And finally, the designer who greets us. It was a dazzling world. At that moment, following my gut instinct, I decided that someday I would see a model wearing my designs on that same runway. That was the moment when I first dreamed of becoming a designer. I continued working towards that goal, and a few years later, my brand was finally able to participate in Paris Fashion Week. In that glamorous moment, my excitement soared as I realized I could participate. I went wild, shouting woohoo, and the whole day, the employees at the main store had a blast together. Of course, the next day, I had a hangover. I ended up spending busy days every day preparing for Paris Fashion Week, but I didn't mind it at all because I believed my dream would come true. Rather, the feeling of enjoyment was dominant. I was often caught up in preparations, even staying overnight at the store. My parents were worried, but more than that, they warmly watched over me. Finally, the day of Paris Fashion Week arrived. The show was a great success, and my brand became internationally famous. I was called to the runway by a model who was wearing clothes from my brand. While walking and waving my hand, I heard someone shout, "Mark." When I turned toward the voice, I found my parents there. My mother was waving her hands enthusiastically with a big smile, while my father stood beside her, looking a bit embarrassed, waving his hand timidly. I was touched by my mom's appearance there. Moreover, my father, who rarely appears in public, had come all this way for me. The fact made me so happy that I couldn't help but tear up. I realized that I want to stand here again and again, next year, the year after, and for the years to come. I think that would surely be worth repaying my parents. My parents raised me with respect, letting me pursue my passions. I owe it to my parents for who I am today. To tell the truth, at one point I almost gave up on my dream of becoming a designer when heading off to university. But now, I'm here as a designer launching my own brand. I realize that if you don't give up and keep putting in effort, dreams will come true. I believe that looking at things with rigid, outdated values in today's world is not beneficial for anyone. For example, concepts like being manly or being womanly probably won't hold in the future. Incorporating and embracing diversity is what gives rise to the potential and growth that follows. I pledge in my heart to continue creating fashion that embraces diversity and incorporates various elements in the future. One day, while I was employed at a large bank, I received an order from the executives to move and improve the performance of a regional branch. However, my wife, Emily, acted reluctantly. When I brought this up, she scowled and asked, "Isn't this a demotion?" She started to claim she had no interest in me with a lower wage since she mistook it for a demotion. Brusquely, "Let's get a divorce," she remarked. I divorced Emily because she was a broken, exhausted, and worn-out man. Emily visited her, a fair companion, George, behind my back. I was motivated to work hard at the branch by my irritation and despair. My efforts paid off 6 months later, and I was promoted to CEO. My ex-wife did something unexpected when this news leaked, but it was too late. My ex-wife and her lover, George, were in for divine vengeance. What was the divine penalty they had to endure? Erwin John is my name. I am a 45-year-old division head at a large bank who is renowned for being sincere and hardworking. Since my early days as an employee, I have been committed to the organization. My diligence has paid off, and I have gained the confidence of the CEO and other executives. I'm lucky to have their favor. As a result, a lot of people think I'll be the future CEO. I've had a successful business career in spite of my hectic schedule. Living with my wife, Emily, has been a good part of my life at home. Emily, a stay-at-home wife, has taken over the domestic chores because I don't have much time for her due to my hectic schedule. I came home solely to sleep. Fortunately, though, Emily never voiced any complaints. "How's your wife?" is a common question among my subordinates, who frequently lament the ongoing disputes they have with their wives. I'd respond, "We get along without fighting," and they'd give me a jealous, incredulous expression. They would commend Emily and myself, saying, "It's wonderful to have no complaints." Emily was the ideal spouse. She does have one weakness, though, and that would be her lavish spending. She had a propensity for shopping for clothing, accessories, and shoes, and once a month she would purchase something designer. She enjoyed shopping online as much as in physical stores. She would even purchase new appliances while the old ones were still functional with a single button press. She appeared to use spending money as a stress reliever. We didn't have kids, so we only spent money on ourselves, which was understandable, considering how little I paid attention to Emily and how I let her do all the housework. I was too ashamed to be harshly critical of her spending patterns. I ignored her financial irresponsibility every time because it never resulted in debt or financial collapse. A workplace celebration party was announced one day, and Emily and I made the decision to go. I informed my subordinates that I would be going, and then I heard a snarky comment coming from behind me. "Oh, bringing your wife to butter up the boss." I turned to see my co-worker George O'Connor grinning savagely. "Not this again." I sighed and whispered to myself. George has always harbored resentment for me, for whatever reason. George has always been a poisonous individual who has hampered me, caused me problems, and attempted to steal my accomplishments or disseminate false information. George was a constant source of trouble for me, even if my personal and professional lives were comparatively steady and I was fortunate to have kind coworkers and subordinates. Fortunately, his ideas never challenged my position because of my successes and the trust one had built up. On the day of the celebration party, Emily and I went to the venue. I left my seat to greet others, and it was a busy round of greetings. Emily and I separated. "Take your time," Emily kindly sent me off, but I felt a bit guilty about it, even though it couldn't be helped. After finishing my round of greetings, I hurried back to Emily. Then I witnessed a shocking scene. I saw Emily and George chatting intimately. I had never heard of Emily and George being close, but there they were, looking unusually friendly, with George's hand on Emily's waist. What was going on? I doubted my own eyes. Then they started to head outside the venue, George's arms still around Emily's waist, escorting her away. Suspicious, I followed them. Why did I have to do this? Despite my thoughts, I stealthily trailed them. The two went outside the venue, stopped at a secluded passage, and then looked into each other's eyes. The intensity of their gaze was something else. They seemed like lovers. But Emily is my wife, and if they were lovers, it would mean an affair. No way. I prayed it was all a misunderstanding. Then next Saturday, at our usual hotel. "Okay," Emily said in a sweet voice. I was surprised. I hadn't heard her speak like that in a long time. But what did she mean by our usual hotel? "Oh, is your husband okay with next Saturday? He's been working even on Saturdays lately." "Such a bore," she added. I was stunned by their words. So they were indeed involved. Moreover, Emily called me a bore? Really? Saying that? Oh, true. A man whose home is no fun at all. George laughed. Hardly. Well, Emily looked very dissatisfied. Then why marry him? I didn't think he was such a bore back then. Her words hit me like a punch to the back of my head. So, that's what she thought of me. I felt sad, but it didn't end there. He's just an ADM now. Now an ADM, hope? Yes, only good for his money. Anyway, let's not waste time on such boring talk. I want to be alone with you real soon. I couldn't bear to listen any longer. Staggering, I returned to the venue. I couldn't believe it. I was completely shocked. I sent a message to Emily on my smartphone telling her I was heading home first, and then I left the venue. A few hours later, it seemed she had come home too, but I stayed in my room and didn't see her. The shock was too much, and I didn't have the energy to confront her about the affair. I was just stunned. The next day, still reeling from the shock, I went to work. Then, I was called in by the executives and ordered to transfer to a regional branch. Surprised by the sudden news, the executives explained they wanted me to help turn around the struggling branch. Faced with the company's crisis, I accepted the transfer. After returning to my desk, George, who had quickly heard about my transfer, started mocking me right in front of me. A transfer to the sticks? That's pretty much a demotion. I ignored him, but the situation with Emily left me feeling uneasy. That night, I told Emily about the transfer to the regional office. She made a clearly displeased face. Isn't that a demotion? Emily responded coldly. No way, she declared. I stayed with you because you were bringing in the money, but if a demotion means less pay, then there's no point in staying together. She said that coldly. I don't want to go to the sticks either. Emily laughed. I was so taken aback by her words that I said, that's no way to talk, trying to get her to listen. But Emily wouldn't hear any of it. Go by yourself. I'm divorcing a broken ADM, she said. Her words and attitude left me in despair. We hadn't been together for a short time. What was all that time for? It just made me sadder. I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. Feeling strongly, I didn't even bother to confront her about the affair with George and filed for divorce before the transfer. I just wanted to escape the mental pain as quickly as possible. It was a result of running away from facing everything. But at that time, that was the only way I could keep my sanity. Heartbroken, I transferred and started working at the regional branch. On my first day, I noticed the tense atmosphere in the branch. When I found out, it was a tug of war between two factions, eager to reform. Apparently, the branch lacked a unifying leader, and that was the root cause. The two factions were so focused on undermining each other that they couldn't concentrate on their work, worsening the performance. I took a neutral stance and started asking each faction about their grievances. As I listened carefully, their superficial complaints turned into deeper conversations. One faction was unhappy with a profit-first policy, while the other was dissatisfied with constantly having to handle troublesome cases. I see, I nodded. I thoroughly reviewed and streamlined the workflow to ensure both sides could engage in their work satisfactorily. As a result, the factional disputes disappeared like a lie, and performance improved. The branch even started to grow. A year later, I returned to the headquarters, having completed my mission. Everyone praised my achievements in reviving the branch's performance, welcoming me back warmly with kind words and appreciation. However, George alone sneered. Finally back from your exile? Huh, John? You made it back. Thought you'd be stuck in the boon is forever. George smirked and laughed sarcastically while using rude language. I understood he disliked me, but such aggressiveness seemed immature. Coming back here, you think there's anything good for you? It's not like that. Why say such awful things? His rudeness was too much, so I retorted a bit. You know, man, George laughed. Should I say it then? He pretended to hesitate. Go ahead, say it, I told him. If you say I can, then I will, he shrugged dramatically. Demoted because you're no good at your job, and your wife left you because you're no good as a man. Even back here, you've got no place. How could he say something so heartless? His claim about my work was just his misconception. And as for Emily, maybe I was a lousy husband to her, but I didn't want to hear that from George, who had stolen her away, committing adultery, and then speaking like he was justified. It was outrageous. George, oblivious to my feelings, kept on talking. Your beautiful ex-wife is my woman now, he scoffed at me. My already subsided anger reignited at his brazen admission of the affair. George seemed to have no understanding of the gravity of his actions. While being assigned to the regional branch to deal with its issues, I had learned all too well the negative impact of having such destructive individuals around. They were not just a nuisance in the workplace, but a toxic presence, affecting the entire organization, as recent investigations had shown. Thinking about it, George was a dangerous person. I realized that I had to ask George to leave the company to prevent any future harm. That meant I needed to uncover all of George's past misdeeds, doing that would reopen my wounds. But for the sake of the company, I had to face it. Now was the time to confront the escape I made when I didn't want to be hurt. With that resolve, I firmly investigated everything around George. It was tough, and it pained my heart, but I succeeded in uncovering the details of George's life. The investigation revealed that George had been involved with Emily 2 years before our divorce was finalized. It seemed he had initiated contact with Emily at a celebration party 2 years ago. He had been heard saying, John's wife is such a beauty, apparently having his sights on her for a while. Someone mentioned that George was annoyed, saying, it irks me that John married such a beauty, and he seemed desperate to ruin my happiness. While dating Emily, he apparently spent a considerable amount of money, flaunting his wealth. I was shocked at the amounts and assets he had. Where did all that money come from? But then, an even more serious issue came to light. Starting with Emily, it was uncovered that George had been deceiving an elderly, wealthy individual, withdrawing money from their account without permission and using it for himself. This is a crime, isn't it? Judging him to be a harmful influence on our company, I immediately reported the embezzlement to the executives. They were shocked and furious. Summoning George, he desperately denied it, claiming, "He's trying to frame me. It's all his delusional talk." He pointed at me, yelling fiercely. However, when confronted with the evidence I had gathered, George had no choice but to admit his guilt. "Oh my gosh," one of the executives exclaimed. "After looking into it, were you the one trying to set John up? What do you have to say for yourself?" Faced and glared at by the executives, George crumbled to his knees, sobbing. Afterwards, of course, he was fired. Moreover, he was required to repay the misused funds, incurring a debt of tens of millions of dollars. It was his own doing, but such a dramatic downfall. Meanwhile, I was appointed the new CEO for my achievements in the region. When news broke of my appointment as CEO, my ex-wife's family, who I hadn't heard from since our divorce, contacted me. "I want to give it another shot. I want to start over." I thought it was a demotion back then and just panicked. It wasn't my true feeling. "Let's give it another try. We can go back to how we were." I naturally refused. Maybe George initiated contact, but Emily went along with it. I still haven't forgotten how she called me a broken man. Emily claimed it wasn't her true feeling, but as soon as George fell and I became CEO, she showed her true colors. She loved money, not the person. Think it over. I sued my ex-wife Emily for alimony due to the affair, and of course, George too, given the hurt they caused. It was only fair. 6 months later, as the new CEO, I was living busy and fulfilling days. Emily and George kept contacting me, saying, "Life is hard. Please reduce the alimony." George, it seems, is working day and night to repay his debts in tough and demanding jobs, leaving him physically and mentally exhausted. As for Emily, having been a homemaker for so long, she kept making mistakes at work and was frequently fired. I don't think mistakes were the only reason, but she wouldn't listen, instead blaming me. "It's your fault for keeping me as a homemaker." In the end, she's the one who came saying that. Apparently, she became hysterical due to lack of money, and I heard she and George broke up quickly after constant quarreling. They were blaming each other, and it seems like it caused a rift in their relationship. I refused to reduce the alimony they were begging for, telling them to take responsibility for their actions. I urged them to face their sins. Humans tend to avert their eyes from things they don't want to see. By facing the reality I had avoided, I was able to grow. I believe that's why I am in my current position. No matter what difficulties I face in the future, even if I want to look away, I vow not to repeat the mistakes of the past. "Well, how are you? You'll get a cold if you continue to stand there in that position." I yelled to the rear, which in some way evoked memories. She turned around slowly. I felt such a powerful effect at that moment that I forgot to breathe. The manager here told me to." I let go of the things I had been contemplating just now, along with the torrential rain. Then I inquired, "You mean the manager in this company told you to wait outside in this rain?" She nodded and smiled somewhat wryly. "Well, I'm to blame. I ended up infuriating him since I was unable to adequately explain. So, she suddenly started crying. An unfathomable rage erupted within of me at that very instant. "I'm Ryan, and this year was my 48th birthday. I keep thinking about the person I once loved, the one I will never see again, when I gaze at the peacock flowers. My first love, with big jet black eyes, a naive smile, and shiny black hair that swayed in the breeze. Time has stayed frozen since that moment. Great job. I'm happy that we were able to securely complete this season's harvest." I gazed at the golden ears of rice while using a hand towel to wipe away my perspiration. After constantly thanking me, the farmer couple gave me some chilled barley tea instead of an Ice-cold beer. I felt my throat clear and my energy come back as I finished it all at once. Even though it was fall, I was assisting the local rice farmers with their harvest because it was still very hot. Naturally, I didn't accept any money. They occasionally prepare meals for me since they know that I live alone and frequently share other crops with me. Oh no, it's all right. While the husband brought over a lot of produce, the wife gave me a brown envelope. We had been friends for about 8 years, so even though they weren't my biological parents, I still think of them as such. I have no one to call my parents anymore. Both of my parents died when I was a little child. My mother died of problems during labor, having been weak from birth. After that, my father reared me alone. However, a delivery worker discovered him collapsed at home 3 years after my mother passed away. What they informed me was that it was heart failure. However, the reality is still unknown because they would not allow me to see my father's body while I was still a child. Following that, I lived in the country with my paternal grandparents. In the community, the paternal grandparents who housed me were referred to as landlords. It seems they were rich once. Perhaps as a result, I was able to grow up in their mansion-like home without experiencing any financial hardships, eventually completing college and starting a career. And here I am now. I took the produce but turned down the money. A guy as considerate as you. How come you aren't married yet? The spouse mumbled as I extended my hand. I smiled wryly. It's not that I'm incapable. Simply put, I don't want to. I've had several opportunities, but I've declined each one. They both furrowed their brows in concern as I said it while chuckling. They then began offering to introduce me to a decent woman they knew, but I graciously refused. I knew I couldn't be engaged with someone because of how I still felt. I used the vegetables I got to make curry when I finished harvesting the rice. It was great because the roo's flavor was absorbed by the cooked, soft potatoes and carrots. While a comedy show was playing on the TV in the background, I was enjoying my meal when all of a sudden the phone rang. What? What happened suddenly? I stopped eating and picked up the phone. The other individual said, "The time has come." Then, after a month, when I look up, all I can see are buildings. I moved through the bustling city streets. When I lived in the countryside, the sky above was always filled with nature. In the morning, I could hear birds chirping. During the summer, towering cumulonimbus clouds filled the sky, and in the evening, the crows flew back to the mountains, calling out against the crimson sky. But here, there was a suffocating feeling that didn't allow for that kind of connection. Even though it was already October, it was still hot and humid. Maybe it was due to the Pacific high-pressure system. But although the temperature itself wasn't that high, the sticky, humid air made people uncomfortable. Between the buildings, I could see a sliver of sky covered by dark, heavy clouds. The forecast said the cloudy weather would continue, with heavy rain expected from tonight into the early morning. Perhaps because of this, no one was carrying rain gear. I had brought an umbrella just in case, but it turned out I needed it sooner than expected. Raindrops began to fall from the sky, little by little. Soon, they formed a swarm, drenching the unprepared city dwellers. In the countryside, especially in the mountains, the weather changes quickly. Even though I had only lived there for about 8 years, I had learned to sense shifts in the weather. Opening my umbrella, I hurried toward a particular building. By the time I reached my destination, the rain had intensified. Then I spotted a lone woman standing in front of the company building. She remained motionless, as if waiting for something, standing in the rain. Are you all right? If you keep standing there like that, you'll catch a cold." I called out to the back that somehow carried a sense of nostalgia. She slowly turned around. At that moment, I was struck by such a strong impact that I forgot to breathe. The manager here told me to." Along with the pouring rain, I dropped the thoughts I had just been considering. Then I asked her, "You mean the manager in this company told you to wait outside in this rain?" She gave a small wry smile and nodded. "Ah, yes. He said that if I wanted the contract, I should stand here until tomorrow. So, I've been here." I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. "I see. Could you tell me the name of the manager who said that?" I'm affiliated with this company. I don't want to believe someone would do something like this, but I am not doubting you. Please, could you tell me?" She hesitated for a moment before answering. "It was the manager from the sales department named Thomas. It's my fault. I couldn't explain properly, and I made him angry, so, Suddenly, she burst into tears. At that moment, An indescribable anger welled up from deep within me. Thank you for telling me. Please wait here for a moment. Oh, take this. Here you go. Not caring about getting wet myself, I handed her my umbrella. She hesitated, but I gently placed the handle in her white hand and moved to a covered area. Then, without delay, I made a call. Please gather all the board members immediately. A problem? Yes, that's right. This situation cannot be overlooked, so we need to hold an urgent board meeting. Yes, thank you. After finishing the call, I returned to where she was, still looking troubled. Whether it was tears or raindrops, transparent droplets trailed down her cheeks. I unconsciously reached out to wipe them away, but then I realized what I was doing and pulled my hand back. Are you okay? I'm okay. Amid the awkward atmosphere, I cleared my throat and said, please go home for today. When I told her to go home, she looked visibly hurt. I hurriedly corrected myself. Sorry, that was poorly phrased. I will take care of the rest, so please don't worry. I will also contact you regarding the contract details as soon as I have more information. Could you give me your business card if you do not mind? As I handed her my business card, she hesitantly offered hers in return. Without realizing it, I glanced at her name. Kimberly Smith was the name of the beautiful woman standing before me. Kimberly, please take care on your way home. Oh, and about the umbrella, it was just a convenience store purchase, so there's no need to return it. I will see you later. With that, I turned my back to her. After finishing the board meeting, I headed straight to the sales department office. The moment I entered, I felt the tension in the air. The employees looked exhausted, glued to their computers, not even noticing my presence. I immediately walked up to a specific person, Thomas. He turned around sluggishly, looking at me with a hint of irritation. Dark circles were faintly visible under his eyes, and he looked physically unwell. His messy hair seemed hastily styled. If someone told me he was the head of the sales department, I would have a hard time believing it. But I wanted to think that he at least tidied himself up when meeting with clients. I wanted to believe that. What do you want? He responded with a sullen tone. It wasn't that he didn't recognize me. He was just annoyed that his pace had been disrupted. Still, I continued without concern. I have noticed inappropriate behavior toward Kimberly, the client representative. I have a few questions regarding that matter. Thomas sneered at me. Before that, who are you? Isn't introducing yourself the most basic etiquette? A guy nearly 50, not knowing that. How pathetic. I clenched my trembling fist and bit my lip to suppress my anger. Apologies. My name is Ryan. I was stationed at a branch office in the countryside, but I was recently ordered to return. It's been 8 years since I last worked here. Hearing that, Thomas let out a crude, mocking laugh. Oh, I see. So you're just some deadweight employee returning from the countryside, and you just happened to run into Kimberly, huh? I don't care who you are, but don't go meddling with useless self-righteousness. That's how things work here. One day you'll get caught up in it too. He laughed again, loud and careless. Meanwhile, the other employees didn't even glance in my direction. Seemingly too overwhelmed by their workload, they acted as if it had nothing to do with them. It seemed that the sales department was in such a dire situation. The root cause was most likely Thomas, standing right in front of me. I have no interest in internal power struggles or promotions, but forcing a client representative to wait outside in the rain and telling her that standing there until tomorrow would secure the contract. How could you even say something like that? Thomas scoffed again. So what? It's just a small company. Nothing significant from our perspective. I just gave her a simple suggestion to wait until tomorrow as an easy way to secure the contract. She should be grateful. I was utterly shocked that someone like him was the head of the sales department. It was beyond absurd. Realizing that talking to him was pointless, I left without another word. None of the other employees even noticed me leaving. It was hard to believe that just 8 years away from the main office had changed things so drastically. I felt a pang of disappointment. However, when I asked around later, I learned that Thomas wasn't always like this. I couldn't help but wonder what had turned him into such an arrogant person. But that could wait. Right now, I needed to deal with Kimberly's situation. I dialed the number from the business card she gave me. A little while later, we met at a nearby restaurant. Sorry for calling you out on short notice. No, it's fine. Actually, I wanted to return the umbrella I borrowed the other day. Although I told her she didn't need to return it, Kimberly, being so considerate, made sure to clean the umbrella before giving it back. That gesture left me feeling conflicted. Memories from the past resurfaced. That day, too, it had been pouring rain, despite the weather forecast saying otherwise. Again? You always do this, don't you? Saying that, I offered her my umbrella. But instead of taking it, she stood next to me, giving me a mischievous smile. I couldn't help but laugh along with her. Seriously? Again? You're hopeless. All right then, treat me to that new sundae at the cafe that just opened. When I joked like that, she nodded confidently, as if saying, leave it to me. When was that? It was probably a memory from high school. Every time it rained, she would say she forgot her umbrella and walk home next to me. I could never forget the profile of her face. Even now, Brian. Lost in my memories, I suddenly heard her voice and snapped back to reality. Oh, sorry. I was just remembering something from a long time ago. Anyway, about the other day, I want to apologize properly. As I bowed my head, Kimberly hurriedly shook hers. No, please don't apologize. You didn't do anything wrong, Ryan. Actually, I was happy you stood up for me back then. From what I heard, it turns out that Kimberly and I are the same age. We are both single. That said, Kimberly was once married and is now a single mother living with her high school-age daughter. My ex-husband and I went through a lot, and we divorced 2 years ago. He dipped into our daughter's education funds, cheated with another woman, and then disappeared. I haven't received any alimony or child support. My daughter dreams of becoming a nurse, so I need money to make that happen. I used to work part-time, but now I'm a full-time employee. Still, things aren't going well. Kimberly spoke with a self-deprecating smile. Hearing that made me feel even more sorry. This whole situation stemmed from our side, and she was not at fault. Thinking I needed to explain things properly, I arranged to meet with her. Today, I sincerely apologized for the trouble caused by Thomas from our company. I bowed deeply, almost touching the table. Kimberly looked flustered and waved her hands. Please don't do that. The root of the problem was Thomas's biased perspective. It seems he looked down on you simply because you're a woman in this industry. It's still common for men to take the lead, even though more women are entering the field lately. Despite that, Thomas dismissed you due to your gender and lack of experience, and even went as far as forcing you to wait outside. We truly regret the inappropriate treatment and the discomfort it caused. As I bowed again, Kimberly seemed at a loss for words, remaining silent. It was lunchtime and the restaurant was bustling. I wondered how much time had passed. Kimberly let out a small chuckle. You're really serious, Ryan. When I got your business card and saw that you worked at a branch office, I figured there must be a reason you came to the main office. Yet you went out of your way to stand up for me, even if it meant going against Thomas, the department head. Please don't trouble yourself over me. Just focus on what's best for you. She smiled as she said that, and for a moment, her face overlapped with a girl I used to share umbrellas with. That made my emotions even more tangled. After softly thanking me, Kimberly placed money for her coffee on the table and left. A little while later, when I returned to the main office, I noticed a commotion. It was coming from the sales department. Peeking inside, I heard raised voices as if an argument was going on. Excuse me. Pushing through the onlookers, I approached the center of the commotion just as a loud shout rang out. What do you know? You quit on your own, and now you're just showing up out of nowhere. It was Thomas's voice, but his angry words were not directed at me. He was yelling at a man standing right in front of him. Why are you here anyway, Kyle? The man called Kyle continued to stare at Thomas with a calm, unwavering expression. I couldn't help but call out, Kyle. Kyle turned around, and when he saw me, his face broke into a smile. Oh, Ryan. It's been a while. Actually, I was the one who contacted Kyle. Let me explain how that happened. After the confrontation with Thomas, I called Kyle. He was once considered the most promising candidate for head of the sales department at the main office and had been Thomas's former colleague and rival. During the 8 years I spent at the branch office, Kyle was one of the people who supported me. I met Thomas, like you mentioned, but honestly, he seemed tense, almost unreasonably aggressive. On the other end of the line, Kyle let out a thoughtful hum and said he would take care of it, asking me to wait. And now, he had actually come to the main office. Most likely, while I was away, Kyle had approached Thomas and talked to him about various things. In response, it seemed that Thomas had snapped back in frustration. However, Kyle remained calm and handled the situation with composure. Hey, take it easy. I didn't run away. I just requested a transfer because my parents, who live there, weren't doing well. Thomas muttered under his breath. Don't give me that crap. Do you have any idea what people said about me after you suddenly transferred? They said I didn't earn my promotion, that I only got ahead because my rival left. Ever since you quit the race, I've been stuck feeling miserable. In short, Thomas felt resentful toward Kyle because his promotion was seen as a probably meant to be error once his rival left. No matter how much Kyle tried to calm him down, Thomas wouldn't listen. The other sales employees seemed uneasy, unsure of how to handle the situation. That's why I knew I had to take charge. During the recent board meeting, it was decided that Thomas is unfit to be a manager. Therefore, he will be demoted. The sudden declaration caught everyone off guard, and they all turned to look at me in shock. Kyle gave a troubled smile, while Thomas's face flushed with anger. You've got to be kidding. Who do you think you are to say something like that? You're just some guy from a branch. I'm going to be the company president starting next year. The room fell silent as if the noise from earlier had been a lie. Thomas stood there, mouth agape, while Kyle remained as composed as ever. Kyle helped me a lot at the branch office. He didn't drop out of your so-called promotion race. He simply chose his own path. You, on the other hand, got caught up in rumors, hurt yourself, and then blamed Kyle and others without realizing the damage you were causing. Isn't it time you face the truth? What are you talking about? The current company president, my grandfather, is hospitalized. I'm his successor. But more importantly, take a good look around. At my words, Thomas looked around the room. He finally seemed to notice. What is this? Everyone looks so exhausted. Hey, Nicholas, didn't you used to complain about middle-age weight gain? Henry, what's with that worn-out face? He finally understood. As the leader of the sales department, he had created this atmosphere. His frustration over losing his rival and his bitterness toward others had turned his team into this. You pushed your subordinates to the breaking point trying to prove yourself with numbers, but it only made things worse. Do you really think you can continue as the department head in the state? Thomas was at a loss for words and fell silent. That silence was his answer. I learned a lot while working at the branch office. A company isn't just a structured organization. It's about building relationships with the local community, respecting clients and subcontractors, and most importantly, pursuing the path you believe in. And when you're wrong, your colleagues will guide you back on track. You're so overwhelmed that you can't even see that. Maybe it's time you put down the burden of being a manager. As Thomas stood there with a blank expression, the employees he had called out earlier approached him. We're here to support you. We all know how hard you've been working, Thomas, they said, offering warm, encouraging words. When I first stepped into the sales department, I felt tension, but not a sense of resentment. The way each employee was absorbed in their work conveyed a sense of dedication, driven by their respect for their superior. The employees here respect you, Thomas. It wasn't because of you that some people left the department. They left for unavoidable reasons like pregnancy, childbirth, or caregiving. Has anyone actually quit because they hated working for you? When I asked that, the sales employees shook their heads. At that, Thomas collapsed to his knees. So I was just overthinking things on my own, getting frustrated and dragging everyone else down? Thomas, looking shocked, spoke in a voice as faint as a mosquito's buzz. Kyle crouched down to meet his gaze, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, Thomas. Not even for a moment did I forget the time when we were good rivals here. When I learned that my sudden transfer caused misunderstandings and made things hard for you, I felt genuinely sorry. The real you doesn't have those tired, clouded eyes. You used to always aim high, driven by a burning passion. That's the true Thomas. I may not be coming back to the main office, but you fought through the fierce promotion race and became the manager here. You should live as yourself. Look, you have subordinates who truly admire you. As soon as Kyle finished speaking, the employees of the sales department all nodded in agreement. Just then, the office door opened and a woman entered. Mom, it's been a while. It was Kimberly. Actually, I was the one who called her. Let's put an end to this matter here. Kimberly has also agreed to that. When I said that, Kimberly gave a slightly hesitant smile, but looked firmly at Thomas and spoke. About what you said that day, Thomas. You weren't entirely wrong. This project is pretty tough, isn't it? You told me that a woman like me wouldn't be able to handle it and rejected the contract. You actually said that because you were worried about me, didn't you? Thomas fell silent, seemingly at a loss for words. The project Kimberly had brought that day was significantly larger in scale than previous ones. Thomas judged that the workload would be too much for her. As a woman, I heard you have a daughter and that you're a single mother. Even though she's in high school, she's still a kid. No child wants to see their mother struggling. The part about waiting until tomorrow, that was just a joke. I figured you'd give up and go home, and then send another representative. I never thought you'd actually keep waiting in the rain. I'm really sorry. With that, Thomas bowed his head deeply. Kyle skillfully wrapped up the situation, and Kimberly reported to her company that the contract with our company had been secured, bringing the issue to a close. After publicly announcing my position as the next president, I became even more dedicated to my work, but I still couldn't shake a lingering sense of unease. Sensing my restless mood, it was none other than Kyle who spoke up. Recently, it seems like you're throwing yourself into work to forget something. You've lost quite a bit of weight since the last time we met. Is something bothering you? As expected of Kyle, he saw right through me. You see right through me. The truth is, seeing Kimberly reminded me of the past. Does it have something to do with why you never got married? He was as sharp as ever. I scratched my cheek and replied, yeah, that's right. I can't forget about her. If part of me still holds feelings for another woman, it would be unfair to enter a half-hearted relationship with someone else. Saying that, I took a sip of the canned coffee I had just bought. The mildly sweet taste reminded me of the first love I once experienced. Could it be that Kimberly is related to that? I couldn't respond to Kyle's question. Kyle, gazing into the distance, began to speak as if talking to himself. It's not up to me or anyone else to decide how you live your life. But I don't want you to live a life filled with regret. My parents and I think of you as family. You've always helped out on our farm, and we really appreciate it. Seeing you happy is what we all wish for. So, make a choice you won't regret. Hearing those words, I found myself unconsciously dialing a certain number. A few days later, on a Sunday afternoon, I met Kimberly at the same restaurant as before. You said you had something important to discuss? Kimberly probably thought it was business-related, since I was the next president of her client company, but that wasn't it. I took several deep breaths before abruptly getting to the point. You know someone named Rachel? At that moment, Kimberly swallowed hard. Rachel, the shocking revelation left me frozen. Then I spoke to her. Please let me meet her. A month after that promise, I found myself on a train with Kimberly, heading to a specific place. After the train arrived, I put the ticket into the designated slot and exited the gate. Although it had been raining earlier, the sky had cleared up, and a beautiful rainbow stretched across the sky. Maybe our meeting wasn't a coincidence, but something meant to be. I nodded silently at her words and looked at the umbrella I was holding. The old black umbrella I used back in high school was now worn out and barely served its purpose. Still, I wanted to bring it to this place. After a 1-hour bus ride, during which I dozed off, we finally arrived at our destination. After getting off the bus, I followed Kimberly's lead. We finally arrived at a hill overlooking the entire town. This was my hometown, where I had spent my student days at my grandparents' house. Since my grandparents passed away, I hadn't returned to this place. The breeze feels nice here. Yeah, it does. This cemetery was built here because it's considered closer to heaven. Ahead of us, an old tall tree swayed gently in the wind. At its base was a small cross. Kimberly knelt in front of one of them and spoke. This is where my sister Rachel is resting. I swallowed hard. This is a place where the remains of those whose family graves have been closed were relocated. It's also a resting place for people who had no relatives and had no other place to be buried, marking the proof of their lives. Despite the clear sky, light raindrops suddenly began to fall. It's just like that day, isn't it? She must have meant the day we first met. Kimberly opened her folding umbrella while I placed the old, worn-out black umbrella from my high school days over the cross. Rachel, I'm sorry I'm so late. You disappeared so suddenly, and I thought you hated me. When I found out later that you had a terminal illness and passed away without telling anyone, I felt betrayed. I think I never got into relationships because part of me was always holding on to you. Rachel, I loved you. As if in response to my words, the rain momentarily grew heavier. But it was just a fleeting moment. Mountain weather changes quickly. The rain stopped just as abruptly, and the bright sun appeared, with pure white clouds drifting across the sky. When we were little, our parents divorced, and Rachel and I, as twins, ended up living apart. But when I was 20, I spoke to her just once. She said that just having someone she loved gave her the strength to fight through the hardest times. She knew she wouldn't be able to see him again, but she wanted to tell that person someday. Knowing you are happy is my happiness. Before I knew it, transparent droplets were streaming down my cheeks. I couldn't tell whether they were remnants of the earlier rain or my own tears. My emotions were all tangled up. Rachel, why? Why didn't you let me say goodbye? In the winter of my second year of high school, Rachel suddenly moved away. I never imagined that she was living with only a short time left. When I heard through someone else that she had passed away in her mid-20s, I stopped pursuing love entirely. I couldn't bring myself to love anyone else because I never got to tell her how I felt. But I finally said it. Rachel, I loved you. After all those years, I had finally put an end to my feelings. Even though it was no longer raining, Kimberly pointed her folding umbrella toward me. It was like sharing an umbrella together. I guess it's because I'm Rachel's twin. I feel the same way. I know I'm just an old woman now, and it might seem silly, but when you offered me that umbrella the other day, Ryan, I felt a little flutter in my heart. I must have looked stunned, but it didn't feel bad. Maybe it's time I start moving forward too. As I said that, Kimberly gently offered me her right hand. At first, I couldn't help but see the face of my first love, Rachel, overlapping with Kimberly's, and my emotions became a mess. But the woman standing in front of me now wasn't the same as the one I had loved back then. Kimberly, I want to get to know you. Hearing that, she smiled, brighter and more beautiful than the sun and the rainbow behind her. I placed the peacock flower I had brought in front of the cross. The peacock flower's meaning is always cheerful. It's perfect for Rachel, who never lost her smile. My feelings had come to a close here, but my future was just beginning. Life still had a long way to go, and I felt hopeful about my future with Kimberly.